so the agenda is here someplace. Right, Bob?
Here's one.
Thanks. All right, so this evening, what we have planned is to do our selectmen's liaison and reports and comments, to get public comment, to have our town meeting and assistant town manager's report. Any open topics that may come up. We have a proclamation for Arbor Day. We will be talking about we have some action discussion items, the town accountant report, the Fall Street Fair Committee, a recreation update. We have an update on the Reading Ice Arena, town meeting preview. We are reviewing the BOS town meeting goals, town manager goals. Now, Bob, we may potentially, I don't know if we need to delay that until John is here.
Mm-hmm.
That may be one that it makes sense to do. And planning for the department head retreat. We have approval of minutes from March 11th and from April 9th. And then we have executive session approval of minutes. Now, Bob, we don't need to go into executive session, correct?
No.
If,
Not if you're going to approve them as presented.
well, I will say that there's actually a section at the bottom of that, which I believe is left over from prior minutes.
Yeah.
And so, as long as we're good with leaving that part off, I think we can
Yeah.
potentially,
That's right.
so, folks should take a look at that. Okay, so I guess it looks like the first item on our list is proclamation for Arbor Day. Oh, actually, it's selectmen's reports, so excuse me. Do we have any selectmen's reports? We're sort of still in limbo in terms of assigning actual liaison assignments, but Dan, do you have any updates for us?
Just attended with a number of you folks, the senior and volunteer dinner over at Parker, a very nice affair. Representative Jones and Senator Lewis were there also, and I took a Patriots and I spoke. Actually, you didn't speak.
Right. Dan represented the Board of Selectmen very well.
Bob Adderley represented himself. We have a lot of folks that do good volunteer work. There are a number of unseen, to many, things that go on, offering rides to folks that don't have transportation, medical transportation, serving of meals at the senior center. There's a lot of need in Reading. Sometimes we don't see that, and this group does a phenomenal job of meeting that need. So I was very happy to be there tonight and honor those folks.
Yeah, it's great, and it really, it adds a lot to our community. The volunteer commitment that we have from this community really adds an awful lot, and supports people. So, Kevin, any comments?
I was just actually very impressed after talking with Jane in regards to the numbers. I didn't realize how big of a volunteer staff that they actually had. She said about 140, and they think they're actually going to be growing that staff, not shrinking it, which is very much, I think, a tribute to the citizens that we have here in Reading, the volunteerism that we have here in Reading. And I was actually just blown away. I thought it was pretty humbling, to be in that room. So I was very impressed.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. John?
I attended the school department had a information session this morning that I attended. And I will say that I've heard a number of presentations over the course of the last 90 days about the proposed project, and I felt this one was the most thorough. I thought that there's a lot of work that's gone into the whys and the wherefores. I think there are a few unanswered questions, but I think that's normal at this point in time. But in general, it was, I think there were probably 12 to 15 people there this morning, and it was kind of a cross-section of people. I think that generally those have been more densely attended at other times, but I think maybe it was vacation week and it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and so there were, it was a less attended. I would also point out that the superintendent had it taped by RCTV so that it can be available. I don't know about on demand exactly, but I think it is going to be run.
They'll probably turn into a YouTube video.
Pay-per-view.
And they should. I'm going to suggest that they turn it into a YouTube video so that people can see it. It's about an hour and a half in length, and it actually covers a lot of ground, so.
Do you know if they taped the one that you attended one of those?
I did, I did not see cameras at that one. That was,
There were some questions that came up from the audience. Some resolved, some continue to be unresolved, and sometimes they weren't questions as much as they were comments and suggestions, so. I think that there's a lot more to, there's a lot more dialogue that's gonna go on, as we move towards town meeting with that and then beyond, so.
So, one other thing that I did think of, I know that we received a message saying that there are a couple of openings for Conservation Commission. And so if there are folks who are listening, they should certainly put in their application. I was just mentioning earlier, we attended the session where it was recognition for the senior center and the elder care services volunteers, but there's a whole series of volunteers throughout the town that really add an awful lot, and it's something that you can vary the amount of time that you spend on, and you can really add a lot to our community, help to contribute to it. So I would certainly encourage folks that are interested in conservation issues to get involved, and take a look at the town website. There's a whole list of the boards, committees, and commissions. We do change those memberships in July, so now is the time for folks to get in and put their paperwork in and express their interest, so. So it looks like public comment, is that the appropriate time for public comment? So I think we have a couple folks. I think Fred got his hand up first. So Mr. Van Magnus.
Madam Chairman, Fred Van Magnus, 243 Franklin Street. I'll make this brief. As you may be aware, we had yet another allegedly serious accident at Main and Franklin Street this weekend on Saturday, right around the noontime hour. We're very, very concerned. We know certainly that the town manager has been working this project very hard, and he had a commitment earlier this year that the state was actually going to implement a whole number of items, short-term fixes this spring. Well, we're a third of the way into spring, and we have yet to see someone arrive down there. We also know that Brad Jones included $1.5 million in the transportation funding bill that was signed by the governor. All of that is good news. However, I call also your attention, back in 2008, there was $100,000 worth of money in there for a dedicated left turn signal in the 2008 version of the transportation bill, and we saw absolutely nothing. And the way the bill is written, you can put in any projects that you want, but it's at the discretion of, first of all, the funding of that bill, and then secondly, it's up to Mass Department of Transportation whether they actually do anything or not. We've already had one example where they've done nothing. We're going to be optimistic. However, Dandelions is now open for business. We have pictures, I think we circulated them to some people, of people in wheelchairs and elderly trying to cross Main Street to get ice creams. Kids are walking down there now. This situation needs to be fixed, and we need the temporary fixes in as soon as possible. So the only reason I'm coming tonight is to just make sure that, it's still on everybody's agenda, we're still watching it, and we really need to get something done.
just so you know, we were at another event where our Representative Jones was at, and we did raise that point to him.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is that the best way to move them down the road? Just,
What's that?
be the squeaky wheel? Is that the best way to get to the ongoing problem that's been there for a long time?
John, it's really hard to know what the best way is. The squeaky wheel tends to keep it on the radar, but, as Fred pointed out, the first step is to get it on a transportation bill, for instance. But as he also pointed out, there is way more projects on that bill than there is funds available. So the question is, how do you actually get action on that issue? I will say, from all the site visits and the meetings that we've had that I've been to, there was no question that this was a very dangerous intersection that was a high hazard and a high priority for the state. So I don't know what else you need to do in terms of raising it as an issue. It's not something that's being debatable as to whether it's worthwhile or not. It's not something that has no sponsorship or funding. I don't know
Well,
what the
it would
next
be
step
tragic
is.
if, we
I
end
know.
up with a serious injury or a death as a result
Yeah.
of, I'd hate to have that be the impetus that causes them to finally get off the dime and do something
Sadly, it
about it.
often is.
Yeah,
Because I think, I think we all got an email over the weekend, and
Yeah.
and we got one actually about a week ago as well. I mean, this is, and, I live in that neighborhood, so I'm clearly aware of it. I mean, I'm go through that intersection probably 3 times a day. And it's always a kind of a crapshoot, how you're gonna go through there. And I'm new to this, so I don't know exactly the best way to, keep it in front of somebody or what we can do, but whatever it is,
well, as Representative Jones said this evening, paraphrase, you folks at the local level have done everything you need to do. It's up to us now at the state. And he didn't have any suggestions for us to do any more, quite
So
honestly.
now we need to figure out how we actually put more pressure onto the state.
Madam Chairman, the key that, well, there's $1.5 million allegedly out there, and as the town manager said, there's no guarantee. The commitment that we had was that they were gonna implement short-term fixes,
Right.
which was the fully protected left turn signals north and south. That will do a huge amount to improve that intersection, and it is not a lot of money. It's not $1.5 million. I'd be surprised if it even approaches a 6-figure number.
They estimated less than 100,000 last fall.
Right. And that's the fix we need.
Right.
Because the $1.5 million is 2, 3, 4, or 20 years down the road. We can't wait that long. We can't have people rolling out of there in stretches.
We agree.
Oh, I know you
You're
do.
preaching.
I know you do. I know you do. So that's what we need to focus on, is to get the short term.
The state that they need to move
Well,
that.
what I can do for your next meeting is draft a letter that you can then decide and approve. We'll send it to our 2 reps and our senator. And we have a senator now, which is nice.
So, the next time we meet is at town meeting, I believe, right?
Monday.
So
Monday,
can we
Thursday.
be, are we posted? We're not posted, but
No.
maybe we can be posted so that we can review
Okay.
and sign that letter then, which
Okay.
is the quickest time we'll be
Well,
able
there
to
is
do that.
precinct meetings, so I don't know if any of you are gonna be tied up with those.
So you meet at 6:30?
Yeah, we could
I
meet at
don't
6:30.
know. I think so.
precincts are at 7.
Precincts are at
Precincts, yeah.
7.
Something's going on that day. I don't remember what. I'll look.
FinCom meeting at 6:30?
No. What's that?
Could they leave it at the check-in counter and let them sign it there?
How do you post it?
It depends, if it's just selectmen, we can take care of it
We
Monday
can-
or
yeah.
Thursday, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to do it as quickly as we can, and that's the quickest I
John
can
is
think
back.
of, so.
Monday. John will be there Monday.
John is
He
planning
will,
to be there
yeah.
Monday, yes,
Okay.
so. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. Bill Brown, 28 Martin Road. At your last meeting, the town clerk gave the board an update on the Charter Review Committee. And in my opinion, distorted some of the facts about what the committee can do and what your board can or cannot do. Under the state law, which can be found in the Department of Revenue website, I don't know why it's there, but it is. There are 2 distinct routes for charter change. Option 1 is the Home Rule Amendment route that requires 15% of the voters to petition and elect a 9-member charter commission that must complete its work, I believe, in 15 months, and must be presented to the voters for an up and down vote, and is required to meet the open meeting laws. The second option is the home rule petition route, which can be created by town meeting or by the Board of Selectmen, and since the Board of Selectmen did not do so, I did so via an instructional meeting to town meeting, which they approved. Under both routes, they have exactly the same powers to propose changes to the charter, and both cannot change constitutional provisions in that you must have an elected legislative body, you must have an elected Board of Selectmen, an elected school committee, and a moderator. At the first meeting of at our first meeting, the town clerk insisted that the committee members must take an oath of office and sign the book. Since it is a committee of town meeting, according to state law, as found in town meeting times, town meeting members are not required to take an oath of office, and I totally resent it. The town clerk made me aware of this 2 years ago when I refused to hold a precinct meeting because the new members were not sworn in and we did not have a quorum. 5 members of the committee are also members of the bylaw committee. And again, The town clerk insisted that they must post a notice that they are acting within the review of the with the community. The Attorney General has ruled on page 4 of the open meeting laws that town meeting and committees of town meeting are not subject to the open meeting law. FinCom, bylaws, and the Rules Committee by the Town of Reading Home Rule Charter are committees of town meeting. The town clerk has continued to state that the work of the committee must be reviewed by town council. While I feel that it should, but by law, after town meeting approves any proposed changes, it goes to the state legislature, and they alone decide what is legal. And what is also dispute whether the town clerk says they will make the determination whether it comes back to the voters or not. If there are no major changes, they can say, okay, you can do it without the voter approval. While I thank the town clerk for her input, which at times has been helpful, her cross-outs and so forth, I strongly feel that she has been very obstructive in that she does not or will not understand the law. So she also suggested the board might wish to oversee the committee. Under the state constitution, town meeting is a legislative body branch, and you are the executive branch, and you have no authority over this committee, which, if you had appointed it, you would have. I asked via the town manager to allow the town clerk to continue to help the committee, but not to continue to hinder it because of her misunderstandings of the laws. Thank you very much. If you want that for the record, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think
Despite misspellings. That was never a strong suit.
Where's your friend? You know who I mean.
Yeah.
you have to use spell check.
I do.
Spell check is your friend.
Some of the words are still the same whether you spell check or not.
That's true. So just to be clear, what you're looking for is the town clerk to continue to participate.
Right.
But you're looking for her to do something different.
Yeah, I understand the laws. And she and I have gone around this several times during the conversation, and she's as stubborn as I am. And I'm saying this
He couldn't help himself that time. He was trying not to, but.
That's all right. All due respect to Bob. And Bob also brought up a point, I believe, at your last meeting, as to how far we can go without actually creating a charter review committee. Our committee, under state law, can go as far as it wants, with the exception of the 4 things that constitutionally we cannot do. We can do everything and anything that a standard charter review committee can do. And by the way, under the provision for that, we are not required to make an open meeting, in the open meeting laws. We don't even have to publish our meetings. But as you know, at my instructional motion at town meeting, I suggest that because I believe in clear and open government. Okay?
Thank you.
No, I appreciate what she's doing, but I wish she would just back off a little bit and let the committee work. And she and I will butt heads still.
Bob?
Bill and I have talked a number of times on this. I've only been to one meeting, and that was some time ago. And we agree with a lot of the things, we think the group should be doing. But I'll say that some of the things he said tonight, and I understand how they could have come across, I'd list under the heading best practices. So for instance, technically it's, town meeting does not need to be posted for open meeting, no question about that. Technically, the 5 members of the bylaw committee who happen to be there don't have to be posted for an open meeting. But it's a best practice, since 5 of them are there, acting in a capacity that is very similar to the bylaw committee, they should be posted for an open meeting, just so there's no questions in the future. So that's one of the examples of the difference between, technically you don't have to do it, but it seems like no harm done and a best practice to do it. And there's other examples of that. I've read the different background and laws that come into play, and it is a bit confusing to me. But it does seem that the ultimate choice is, well, there's many. Bill's right, in creating the body through town meeting instead of through the selectmen, it is different. None of us sort of have the right to butt in, if you will, because it's a legislative body's choice. However, it still also seems like a best practice to have town council review anything that the committee comes up with. And I think Bill's okay with that. It does also seem like he's right, that the legislature ultimately is the last call if you go the home rule petition route. And ultimately, it's this group's purview to make that decision. But, you know, we can encourage them as residents or as employees to do different things. And I've encouraged him to go to the voters, not to go to the state legislature. But there's no reason you couldn't do both. But as long as we go to the voters somehow, some way, I'd prefer that route. That doesn't mean you have to. It is up to the state legislature to ultimately decide, is the changes that you're proposing far-reaching enough that the committee you've organized is not sufficient and you need to use a different process for it. They can reject the suggestions, let me rephrase it and put it that way. So I understand the spirit of Bill's comments and I agree with some of them, but there's law and then there's also sort of best practice and approach. And somehow you have to work all that out. And I will say from the meeting I was at, it was only one meeting, there's a wide range of opinions within that body itself of what its mission is, and I don't know if that's still true or not, but it's certainly no wonder that there's been lots of discussion about what to do and how to do it.
Actually, and I think a lot of that misunderstanding, again, stems from what the town clerk originally said. We can't do that, we have to have a charter commission. And that's where she and I butted heads. And I know I'm stubborn, that's fine. And I know she's stubborn. And I agree with Bob. I have no problems with any of this stuff. Once the legislature is done with it, come back to town vote, I have no problems with that. I do have a problem with her sitting there saying, no, this is the direction you have to go. When the law clearly says that we can go the other direction. All I want her to do is understand the law, and we can come to an agreement.
Obviously, you're agreed on. Is the point agreed between you and Bill that whichever path you take, the powers are the same to change the charter?
I don't know enough to agree with that, honestly. That was not my impression from when this process began.
What do you think
And
the
not
plain
very-
language says in the?
I thought the plain language, it mattered whether you were a committee or a commission. And I thought the commission had far more sweeping powers and was the thing that had to meet over more than 1 year.
No, if you read the thing, Bob, again, it's under the Department of Revenue website, I don't know.
Yeah,
If you read it, we both have the same power. It's just a different route. It's like you and I going to Portland, Maine. We go up 95, I go up Route 1. We both get to Portland, Maine. It's just a difference how we get there.
I think we need some kind of a ruling on which is.
I've
Yeah.
talked to council.
I would have no problem with it.
Bill is right, except you can take many paths under either format. And the question is, do you want to go to the voters or do you want to go through the state? If you go to the state, as Bill had suggested all along, to his credit, he's right. Is that a best practice? To just say, this is what a group of 18 or 20 residents want to do, and they're going to submit it to the state. Good luck. I don't think that's a best practice. I want more community input into that. I'm not saying they would come up with a bad idea. I don't want the state to just go up or down on something that hasn't got some kind of wide circulation and buy-in. And to their credit, they've already had one public meeting. I'm sure they'll have another.
Doesn't it end up at the state ultimately?
Yes,
Well, the AG would review it.
Yeah.
yes.
So,
It's a question, he's right, it's a question what route you take, I guess.
and so, Bill, are you not interested in the voters?
I have no problems with the voters, John. My problem is with her presenting to the board the first night. You can't do that direction, when I clearly have the law right there in front of me.
So the goal, it sounds like, of your visit tonight is clarification?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I guess, you know,
Yeah, we'll get there.
yeah.
I mean, I have no problems with going to, the reason the law is set up this way, John, is I understand it. If you're only dotting i's and crossing t's, the legislature says, okay, you're not making any substantial changes, it comes back, you don't have to go through sending out mailing to 8,000 households, which is an expense.
So it's a simplified version if you have a simplified change?
Yeah.
Correct.
And if the legislature says, no, it has to go back out to the public, I don't have a problem with that. But let them determine it and not her.
And it sounds like, what we're hearing is that the scope can be as big as it wants to be, given the current, is that the way you see it, Bob?
Yeah, and the real surprising thing that I learned, and we'll see if Bill agrees or not, it's always interesting, is the question of what the scope is entirely up to the state. There's no boilerplate answer, there's no guidelines you can use. You could come in this big or this big, and the state decides whether the scope's okay, case by case. Is that fair?
There's several towns that have taken the home rule charter, and then there's some that have taken the petition. I chose the petition for the simple reason that, to me, it was the simplest route to take without going to a great deal of expense of having an election. And by the way, I don't believe under the other scenario that the Board of Selectmen can institute it. It has to come from the petition for 15% of the list of voters. The way I read it. And I could be wrong, I have been before now. I don't know when, but.
You thought you were
Someone-
wrong
Do we
once.
have a recording of that?
Here's the minutes right here from 2004.
Well, at least you said I thought I was wrong once, but I'm.
Exactly.
We're just gonna edit it.
Just clarification, and Laura and I can come together and, we're clarified on.
Reason
what the
together, yes.
Process, I have no problem with
Okay.
Thank you.
that. Hey, thank you, I'll now speak
Thanks.
quiet for a few minutes.
Is there additional public comment? Okay. Bob?
I'll just do one thing. I submitted a couple comments over the weekend, but Lieutenant Robbins is here from the police department. On tonight's packet, on pages 4 and 5, is something we briefly discussed last week that I was going to ask this week, that the selectmen delegate to the town manager the authority to set parking rules and regulations for the West Street project during construction. So Dick is here if you have any questions. There's a suggested motion on the front page. It's fairly simple. And certainly the board is entitled to basically, put any checks and balances they wish in this. I can report as often or as seldom as you like. I don't expect to be making these decisions myself out there guiding traffic, but I'm sure I'll have a lot of input from the police. The real key is here, no matter how well we communicate and plan, things happen in a day that weren't expected. Something happens, some condition is met on the road, and some different route has to be chosen right away. So it's really very helpful for, frankly, the police chief to have this ability to, make good decisions on the fly. And you can see from the past, I did include the high school project. My recollection, I read a report over the weekend of 2 or 3 years worth of public complaints. There were very few complaints once the board did this about traffic and parking. It was hours of construction, noise, but not about this, so that was good. And this is,
We have a suggested
you
motion.
did the same thing with the downtown project, and that was probably a more dense area. This was a little trickier. West Street is really only going to be a big issue, I think, rush hour on each end. And Lieutenant Robbins is here.
It's in the early morning because it's a horror show from Wilmington all the way to Woburn. It's been a traditional cut through from 93. If you've ever been on 93 heading into Boston in the morning, it's just atrocious. So if you're only going to Woburn, that was the traditional cut through. Jump off at 93 on Lowell Street, shoot down to West Street into Woburn. And currently, we have that traffic coming from Wilmington to Woburn, that's through traffic. Coming from Woburn towards Wilmington, at this point with the NSTOP project, we're detouring them south to Pine Ridge, to Oak, and then they're able to resume their path onto West Street into Wilmington. So, and yeah, in the morning and in the afternoon, we get a few complaints. Some speeders, but it's more congestion. Yeah, it's right around 7 to 8:30. I mean, some people are finally getting the message. I mean, you see all the big signboards every place, so.
And we do have signboards on 93 or not?
No.
I haven't seen them.
No,
I
it's
think
strictly,
that'll only be for the state
That'll only be
portion.
for the state
Yeah.
portion. of the
Yeah.
project, okay.
it's just, we can act more quickly when we get a complaint, follow up, investigate it, confirm it. It's just so much easier if we need to put a stop sign, a no parking sign, residents only sign, it can be done quick, fast, and in a hurry. We're not taking any, it's temporary until the end of the project, so we wouldn't be, invading, your responsibility.
So one example that's come up already, and I'm sure there's many, is the corner of Pine and Oak, a temporary stop sign on Pine Ridge. Because people who aren't used to going that way just plow right into Oak without even looking right or left. And I talked to a famous resident on Oak Street that used to sit in this room, and he said, I have no problem with that as long as it's temporary.
As long as it's temporary, yes, absolutely. That's what I would want to make sure is that it's temporary, right? It sounds like it looks like you might have some
I do.
additions or
I wanted to ask if the
comments,
board is
so.
interested in maybe a twice a year report of progress from the town manager on how things are going.
Oh, yeah, at
I'll put
least.
that into the motion if, is that a?
Do you want the twice-a-year report to be specifically around the traffic? Or is
Oh,
that,
the-
or twice a year around?
How well the regulations are
project.
handling,
'Cause,
resident comments.
I-
I'm keep leaving it kind of general
Yeah,
here.
I'm thinking we need more than a twice-a-year update
Well, you want a
on
project
the-
update
on
much
project
more often,
update.
but just for this
But
purpose.
for this purpose.
Yeah, just for this. All right, move that the Board of Selectmen delegate the authority to the town manager to establish and amend parking and traffic regulations in the West Street area during the upcoming months of construction and as defined in the Town of Reading, Massachusetts, traffic rules and regulations adopted March 28th, 1995 as amended. Set approval to expire November 1st, 2016, or such earlier date as the construction project may be completed. I'm going to add the words, town manager shall present a report of progress to the Board of Selectmen not less frequently than every 6 months.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Additional discussion? There being none? All those in favor? 4-0.
Okay, thank you. There's no other town manager report we need to go over right now.
No other town manager report.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to read that? I'll do the motion.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the next item is proclamation for Arbor Day. I have here the proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday is called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees reduce erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of the business areas, beautify our community, and wherever they are planted are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas Reading has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for over 25 years and desires to continue its tree planting ways, now therefore we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Reading, Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim May 2nd, 2012 as Arbor Day in the town of Reading, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations.
I think you meant 2014 there. You said 2000.
2014, yes.
Okay, move that the Board of Selectmen approve the proclamation for Arbor Day.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you. Bob, who does this proclamation go to? All right. Congratulations, Paula.
Thank you, tree lovers everywhere.
Now we have Sharon.
Making room for me. First, I want to welcome John and Kevin to the board. This is the first time I've presented to you. I wish I had better news for you. The management letter we recently received from the auditors contains an area where they feel we need to strengthen internal controls related to procurement. During the audit for the fiscal 13 audit, they discovered that we had a contract that was significantly over its contract price. And what they had done is they traditionally will pick a contract that's clearly large enough that they would need to go to bid. And they just asked to see the bid documents. Essentially, they pulled out the paving contract, which is through aggregate, and they had all of the bids. We went to bid. And in that folder, for whatever reason, somebody put a copy of an invoice that showed that they were over the contract price by like $500,000. And had they not been there, we might not have known that this was going on. And so when I questioned the engineers about it, they basically said, well, we estimate the work when we go out to bid, and then that's the basis for the contract amount. But in the contract, it says the work is estimated and subject to change. We could do less work, we could do more work. But I feel like they failed to recognize that we still are held to a limitation of how much we go over. And seeing it go over by the amount that they saw it go over for this particular contract was significant enough that the auditors were not pleased to see it. However, when you go and look for guidance about how much they're limited to, just to be sure, because I went looking for the guidance to provide to the engineers so I could say, look, this law is what regulates your construction contracts, and it says that you cannot go over by more than 20%. You need to go out to bid. If you're going to go over by that much, you need to go out for the additional work. Nowhere in the law that regulates this does it even mention the 20%. I called the Attorney General's office, and they told me the rule of thumb is 20%. And so, okay, that's the rule of thumb, but how can you really hold anybody accountable to something that you don't put in the law that's supposed to regulate it? But it's certainly not a good business practice. And so I've sat with the engineers and talked about what I found, because I wondered how it even happened. Because essentially when we have a contract, we issue a purchase order for the full amount of the contract, which sets the money aside so it can't be spent twice, keeps track of the contract price. So I was baffled. How did it even happen? And the last bill was paid when I was here maybe 2 months, so I'm like, how did I miss it? You know, how did I not notice it was over? But I had comfort based on seeing a purchase order, because that meant there was a contract out there that, you know, was keeping track of the cost. So when I did further investigation on this particular contract, I found that there were 4 separate POs. The first PO was for the full amount of the contract and was done a couple months after the bid process, which is when I'd probably expect it to be done, just about around the time when they awarded it. And then over the course of the 18-month contracts, 3 additional POs got issued for $100,000, $200,000. And that's the internal control to help protect us from this happening, and I didn't understand how it could happen. There were 5 people who were charged with approving these POs, but I don't know if they just didn't know that they should be looking for it. Sometimes a mistake like this has to happen for people to realize they need to be looking for it. The town accountant is only notified when a requisition is out there. We were in that status, maybe a low-risk status, because we never had a problem before. To correct the situation, I felt it was necessary to add myself to the approver, so that I could see that they were following the procurement law, requiring them to have a bid memo in there so I can see that they did go to bid, a copy of the contract so I can see. Now, I would have signed the contract saying that the appropriation was there, but also I'd like to see it in the requisition approval so that all the approvers can see it, know that the amount of the PO is not in excess of what the contract is, and that if it's always attached, if somebody has a question like, I thought I approved this already, I saw this contract before, that you can easily identify when you go looking up the PO what contract it pertains to, because you know, if they did the math, they'd realize pretty quickly the very first PO issued was for full contract amount. There shouldn't have been another one. And so the auditors have made a recommendation that I recertify if they have an overage. Have them come to me and tell me how much they're going over by. I certify that their appropriation is there, and that, that it makes sense that they're not going out to bid, that they're not going over by more than the 20%. So that's going to be part of the process going forward. So we revisited all of the policies that should naturally be there. They should have been attaching all along, making sure that the people they're asking to approve these POs have all the information to do so, to know they went to bid, to know that the contract is X amount and the PO that they're asked to approve is X amount. But I feel like the problem is that so many months or maybe even a year has passed, and then they're requesting another PO and nobody recalled that they already signed off on the first one. So the mistake highlighted for me a need to just look at the department a little more closely in terms of their procurement. mean, engineering does probably more procurement than anybody else in the building, so I wouldn't have expected this to happen in that department. With the assistance of Jane Casella, we both reviewed all of the POs that were outstanding for fiscal 13 and fiscal 14 just to see the extent of the problem. In fiscal 13, the one that we're highlighted in our management letter was over by actually $606,000, not the $500,000 that the auditor had stated, so it was worse than I thought there. And there was another contract that was over by more than 20%, by $13,000, not a big dollar amount, but still over the 20% max. And they did not note that. They didn't pick up on that one. In fiscal 14, they have another one, and it's, again, a sidewalk one. So it's possible that this management letter comment will exist again in fiscal 14 until we get things going on the right path. And everybody over in engineering has been very cooperative about it. Doesn't want to see it happen again. I think that they admittedly said, whoa, I had an 18-month contract, I went out to bid, I was thinking more about the term of the contract, not the amount of the project. But it's important that we keep track of those costs.
So how often do we have these situations where we do multiple POs? Like, I guess anytime it's a multi-year project, you would have multiple
Yeah,
POs.
if it was multiple year, I could expect it, or if they got so many change orders where they knew they were going to need to utilize that 20%.
So when we have those situations, do we also have a new policy where we're listing, this is the total amount of the contract, this is the PO, this is what's remaining?
Yes,
So
exactly.
even if like you had 3 of them, you'd know, okay, this is what's remaining.
Well,
And
I
you
asked
always
that
know
they-
what's remaining.
I asked that they issue the PO as soon as they award the contract, unless it's multiple years, as you
Right.
said. So there would be no need for another purchase order. I shouldn't see multiple that I have to go and add them up. I mean, I
Well,
will be.
They should
yeah.
provide you, if there is any need for that.
If there
the
is, I said
difference
all
should be
that backup
provided.
should be attached. It should be very easy for the approver to know, yes, this, the money is there for this, that there aren't existing POs, or that this is the existing, amount, and we're gonna be going over, and this is the need for this, a memo
So,
even.
will the most recent PO have the archaeology of what's going on in the project, so will it be there?
Well, if
So
they
if 18
attach
months
it,
goes by, for example,
Yeah.
and
that's the thing, they need to attach backup if they need an additional, well, a requisition goes out, and it should have attached to it the contract that it's related to. If I have to recertify, they're gonna need to attach that as well, a memo explaining what's going on, why am I asked to, I think the big red flag should have been with these POs is that the contract was signed in May of 2011, and there was a PO issued at the end of 2012, so you're just like, wouldn't somebody have looked at this contract and said, why am I signing off on a PO for a contract that was signed in May? But I guess people just didn't know what they were looking for. And now all those people who are approvers, I sat with them, explained what went wrong. It's going to be on the forefront of everybody's mind. It's certainly going to be on the forefront of my mind. I've added myself as an approver to every requisition over $10,000, so everything will have to be attached or it's not going to get past me. But at the position we were in before, it was just notify the town accountant so that I could test it. I couldn't possibly look at all of them, I guess is the thought process. But at this point, I don't feel comfortable. I definitely want to see all until I feel comfortable again. And they're going to need to have everything attached or it's going to get rejected, so I think that they know that. I sat with every engineer and told them what went wrong, gave them a copy of the procurement manual. I actually have some meetings next week because I had some fraud questions. I wanted to cover that base and make sure that there's no reason we would favor one vendor over another, but when they got my schedule for a meeting, they wanted to have their union rep with them. I don't know if they thought they were in trouble. They're in trouble. I was trying to educate them and then just make sure we don't have an issue there. That being said, I think that I don't foresee this ever happening again, but I wouldn't be surprised if the comment reappears next year just because I found one incident in this year. Yeah. I wish I didn't see what I saw. I was hoping it was just an isolated incident.
Is there any way to make sure the auditors know, this is the list of what we found, and so really we'd be looking for a comment if there was anything that happened beyond that date, or they were the ones that were
I have
already
had conversations with them
uncovered?
about it. I said to them that, I've been looking we didn't take this comment lightly. We never do take any management letter comment lightly, that we're going to do everything in our power to fix it. And I did mention to them that in my review, I did find another one, just to be forthfront. And I don't know if they intend to show the comment again, just to know that we know that one's out there, even if they don't select it. But they were very pleased with all that we were doing to make the correction, to make sure it doesn't happen. And sometimes something like this has to happen to realize how your internal control wasn't quite strong enough to keep it from happening, and then how do I shore it up and make sure it doesn't happen again?
Would you categorize this as a system flaw rather than a personnel flaw?
Probably a little of both. I mean, I think that we had a lot of trust in the purchase. I guess people didn't really know how to use the purchase order system. I mean, because it's your friend. You know, you issue a purchase order and it's keeping track of the cost. You revisit that one PO and it tells you how much you've spent thus far. And so they weren't seeing it as the tool that it's meant to be. And it highlights to me that they weren't using it in the way that it was meant to be
So
used.
from an accountability standpoint, I mean, people that made these errors, and it sounds like you feel like they were genuine errors.
I felt that they were errors, yeah,
But there still needs to be a certain accountability around that.
for sure,
I
for
mean,
sure.
you know, you can make a mistake, but you still have to be accountable for it. You're in a
Absolutely.
professional position.
But I do feel like it was not like I feel like it was one of those situations where maybe they just didn't take the time to realize, they kind of circumvented the system in such a way that they were now putting themselves, they needed to track the cost because they kind of issued more POs than they actually had.
So they took away the tool.
They took away the tool that was meant to help them.
So I guess.
The good thing is they did have the appropriation. I mean, we weren't in a situation they spent more money than what we had. And the other issue that maybe made this issue more likely to happen is that they had more money available this particular year. In a typical year, we're taking streets off that estimated list for paving because maybe we've identified water sewer work that prevents us from doing a street that we had hoped to do. So they say in a typical year, we probably would have done less work. This particular year, we gave them more money from the 40R stabilization fund to do more paving. The roads were in bad shape and they had this money and they wanted to do it. That put added pressure probably on them to get more done. And they probably didn't think about how much they were going over and that they should have gone out to bid. Or they did know, I can't speak to what they did know, but
So I guess, you know, from an accountability standpoint, I mean, it sounds like you're satisfied that mistakes were made, you know, that people weren't just acting in a cavalier way on their own, but that they had made mistakes.
yeah,
But I think it's important to note their file.
yeah.
That,
I
you
mean,
know,
I
that-
definitely feel like they are taking responsibility for it.
So is there some permanent record of that?
Well, George submitted in your packet, he's the head of the engineering division, his intentions of how he's going to correct this going forward and ensure it doesn't happen again. Because, you know, if they authorize more work than we have appropriation for, it's going to be very embarrassing. Because even though I can require them to recertify with me, if they don't actually do it, and if somehow find another way to get it past me,
So that's kind of my point, is that at some point,
yeah.
if something like this happens again, it's going to be found again.
Oh, yeah.
You know, either the auditor is going to find it, or you're going to, hopefully,
Somebody-
you're going to
I
find it
would think-
before
I
it
would
gets
hope I would
there.
find it. The problem with
But-
this
And I think
particular-
that you probably will, because obviously your antenna's up around this.
Oh, yeah, because
So,
it's happened.
The big question I'm asking is, when somebody makes a mistake once, they make a mistake once, and, you know, that's remediated, and, you know, they're properly instructed. What happens if they do it again? Do we have a record that says, you know, this is
Well, I'll
inappropriate?
know if it's the same department, but I wouldn't have the right to
So
do anything.
I think what
in
you're
terms-
saying, John, is you're looking to make sure that going forward, not only do you have this policy, but you have a way to track and you have clear performance measures on whether people are
Yeah.
following the procedures.
Mhm.
And that if they don't, there's definitely
'Cause there
repercussions.
So
wouldn't
my
be a
own
way to-
business experience is simple. You know, when somebody makes a mistake, you clarify the mistake, you instruct them,
Mhm.
you know, you put systems in place to make sure that doesn't happen again,
Yeah.
give them the tools they need. But it's clear that
Yeah.
this is not to happen again.
No.
And it's a matter of record, so.
So Bob, I just had one other thing that I actually wanted to ask you about. So one of the things that you brought up and that you've talked about is a desire to consolidate procurement in one area. And
That's
so
another-
how does that play into this whole thing? You know, it seems to me if you had one group that was doing procurement, that would at least help to keep at a minimum the number of people that are going through this, that are doing the approvals and doing the
Mhm.
process.
It makes it more
Yeah.
consistent and centralized.
I think there's a little background that might be helpful to this board and to Sharon. You know, when Gail started 10 years ago, you know, the practice in the industry and certainly in the town was very loose. there was lots of money around to do work with, and all the money didn't always have a name that anyone paid attention to. So when there were water projects bid a certain way and there was extra money, you carried it over to the next year, you used it eventually. Constantly turning over money after money after money. So it was a culture of not paying a lot of attention to the purpose for the money. I mean, we certainly distinguish water from the general fund, absolutely. But in terms of really identifying the way, you know, an accountant or a finance person would mathematically, this goes with this goes with this, it just didn't work that way. That was not the industry practice. As you can see, it's not even written as a law anywhere that there's a best practice of 20%. Complicate that with the fact that Chapter 90 funds, until very recently, were very fungible year to year. They're a lump of money you had. They didn't have an end date to them. You could use them this year, you could move them forward, no rules at all. Now, there's finally rules, perhaps because of these reasons. So, in a sense, I don't blame the engineers culturally, because this is the way the practice has always been. But certainly once Gail got here, she tried to crack down on that, and it took her about 5 years to get them into the habit of, you know, look, you don't just close that project out, you return it to reserves, and it's water once the project's done. You don't just hang on to it.
Right.
You know, rather than asking for more money, they would hang on to 5 little extra things, leftovers, and do the 6th project without telling anyone. Well, no, just ask. So that was a hard habit to break. But the idea, when I wanted to centralize procurement last fall, is they have a very capable procurement expert in the department. Jane was the former DPW business manager, and within the same department, they wouldn't use her skills. She offered, they wouldn't use them. So my answer was, okay, now you must. So the idea was centralizing them. You know, although they do a lot of procurement there, they don't have the training and the background that Jane does. She's certified in this. And we have 3 people in town with varying levels of this now, and we probably want to get one more. You know, the change I made when I heard of this was say, fine, Jane is now the last call on this. She is the expert. She has the last word above the department head. She is the procurement person. I didn't want to do that until July 1st because we're just thinly staffed, but, you know, Jane's got a million things to do, and this is 1,000,001. You know, and then if you have a process that's well discussed, well set up, and the proper staffing, if something goes wrong at that point, then there's a real problem. I think up till now, there's no malicious intent. I think it's just disorganization and maybe some poor planning. If anything goes wrong from this point forward, that's not going to be the reason. You know, I think now we're organized. So everyone has basically been put on the same page, just saying, this is the way you do it. It doesn't matter how you used to do it. This is the way it's done now. And I do believe they all understand that. And I know, I was very impressed by the memo that George put together with his responses. So he certainly understood and took it very seriously, as I think the whole department did.
Other questions?
Just one real quick. So this, you don't feel that this was a problem from a training standpoint so much as
Well, it could have been.
procedure?
I think that it's highlighted a need for more training in
Yeah.
this area. Jane and I were talking about, once, they're going into a busy season right now
Right.
of you know, public works work. And so maybe after that season kind of winds down, we should maybe really give a great amount of focus on training in this area. I mean, obviously, they've gotten kind of a review, having me come down and talk to them, and I'm gonna sit with them individually and talk about what happened and how it happened. I sat with, you know, George and the department head, and, but the individual engineers, I kind of spoke with them in a group setting, but then I'm also gonna sit with them individually just to get some, you know, viewpoints on how they see things going, and also, you know, to give them that one-on-one, this is why this happened, this is why you need to use the purchase order, and this is what it's supposed to be doing to help you. I don't think they totally understood that. I mean, I think this highlighted to me that they didn't understand the tool that was put there as an internal control, but as a, you know, guidance for them to manage these costs and not go over. I don't think they viewed it in the way I view it, for sure.
It wouldn't have dawned on either Sharon or I that when you had a $500,000 purchase order, you could reuse it when the money was done.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I
no.
wouldn't think that.
It's kind of simple.
I mean, I'm not happy this happened, but it highlighted to me that they're not using it the way I would have intended.
It actually seems fortunate that that memo was misfiled.
It really does. I mean, it just seemed odd that it was in there, but at the same time, I don't know that I would have caught it right away. It would have been if I happened to select that and started looking closer, but I don't know if I would have known they would have issued so many for one. I don't know how quickly I would have picked up on what they actually did. I don't think they were doing it to be, defiant, and, I don't know, I don't know if it even was just one engineer issued the original PO and the other one didn't realize the next, that the other person did it. I don't know how it happened, but I do know that that's not the way to do it.
And I do know, just to be clear, although it's a small sample, it appears that the town got a better deal than it might have if it had gone back out for bid. So there's no problem with somehow someone making a profit off this at the taxpayer's expense. We did more business with the low bidder than we were supposed to do. It's not a question of doing anything nefarious around that. It was, in a sense, doing too good of a job, more than you should have.
They were trying to get everything done for the town.
Yeah.
I think they
Didn't
feel that
realize
pressure to get that money spent and really get those
Yeah.
roads in good shape. There's a pressure there, I think, whether it's spoken or not, I think they feel pressure to get that.
There's plenty of talk, potholes were mentioned at the meeting we were at earlier tonight, so.
Yes, indeed. Pressure, what pressure?
Pressure. Great, well, thanks for bringing the information. Our next item on the agenda is the Fall Street Fair Committee.
If I could just introduce it. Does anyone want to come up? You want to come up, Steve? Just to be clear, Steve mentioned to me and to others.
I haven't sat here in a while.
I know. I can order you around.
Exactly.
That he was exploring options, different formations of the Fall Street Fair Committee, in terms of, potentially not being part of the government. I just want to be clear that the selectmen have done this before, where they've eliminated, if you will, boards or committees. But that has to be done through a hearing process, so that's not for tonight. Tonight is just a discussion. They have some thoughts. There'll be others in the room with some thoughts. If ultimately the board wishes to take any action to remove any standing committees, you have to properly notice that with a hearing and go through a procedure, just so you know that.
Okay, this is really just starting the
This is just
discussion to
information.
see if it's.
Up till this point, it's all been informal discussion between
Yep.
Steve and myself and John and several others.
So, thank you, Madam Chair and Board. First, we have members of the Street Fair Committee that volunteers. I'd like to recognize Brian, Denise, and Denise in the back. And then we also have members of the Economic Development Commission who have some comments as well. So this is going to be the 6th year of the Street Fair. It's been a lot of work for a lot of years, but I think it's got very good results. We have the goal initially of the Street Fair was to celebrate the completion of a multi-decade project and getting the downtown improved and completed. And then at that point, it was also to try to, celebrate the downtown, the completion of it, but also showcase our businesses and just get people down here, make it a vibrant part of the community. And I think we were successful in that. And we've continuously built on that, been successful every year. That said, we have an appointed board, appointed by you, the Board of Selectmen, that is of volunteers that run the committee. And then there are associates amongst that, so there's quite a lot of people who volunteer and run that. And the two goals that the committee, that Bob said this is discussions I've had, but the committee took a vote on this as well. The two goals that the committee really is trying to achieve with this is we're looking to have you disband the committee as a formal committee of the Board of Selectmen. Our recommendation is then to have recreation oversee the street fair. The volunteers will still work as volunteers, but not as a member of an appointed board. Reasons for that is we are completely 100% hamstrung by open meeting law. And for what we have to do, open meeting law, it holds us back and doesn't really apply. It's not we're making decisions, but we're making decisions on where to put vendors, right? And we have to, it's just really difficult to work under the Massachusetts open meeting law. We're not making decisions that affect the community in that respect. Truly, the decisions are where do we Where do we put this vendor? Where do we put that vendor? That's truly, and then, you know, do we have DPW set up right? Do we have the police right? Do we have the fire right? That's the decisions that we make. A lot of it does continuously repeat, and it gets a little easier each year, but it's still a lot of work. That's the second piece that the committee really wants to do is make sure we're through many sets of volunteers. We have some historical volunteers that were here from the beginning from the Economic Development Commission. We have some on the current street fair committee that have been on since the beginning, and some newer ones. So we go through a lot because it's a lot of work. We want to make sure that the fair is a long-term sustainable event in the community, a community event. And one of my goals from the beginning was to make this a town-run event. There were struggles at first because we didn't know if it was going to be successful, we didn't know how to do it, we didn't know how to run it, and we relied on volunteers. Last year, John worked through Recreation, worked quite a bit and organized a lot of it. I was appointed chair last year, but I was doing a lot of traveling for work, so on and so forth. John took the reins and ran it. And for this fair to be long-term sustainable, I think town staff has responsibility and accountability for it. And if they have that, it's not relying on John, it's relying on, be it recreation, community services, whoever it is. It's accountable to the community. The community is holding our government accountable to do that each year, and it doesn't cost the community any money. So the fair actually runs a profit. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But the fair is self-sustaining in regards to revenues. It comes through from all the vendors who pay their fees to come in, and it generates a profit after all expenses, which is DPW at a discount, police and fire at a discount, and recreation did not get any expenses paid last year. It was strictly volunteer from the staff, so want to make sure that gets handled. So those are the two main goals, and why we're asking this committee, this board, to hold a hearing and disband our committee. I don't know the date, Bob, but we sunset anyway as a committee, probably next year. I don't remember. I have to look that up. Yeah, I think it's next fiscal year. We sunset anyway.
What year is that?
It might be a year from this June.
A year from this
Yeah,
June.
so it'd be June of 2015. So this gets us to the goals that we want. We can run the fair and be able to work on email, phone calls, and say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. And also, the fair will be run for the next 5 years or whatever. And as an example, take a look at Town Day. Right? Town Day is mostly organized, though it's a Lions event and a volunteer event. Recreation does almost all the work, and it continues each year. And that's where we want to go. That's what we're asking the board. Now, the second question that comes up, and why we have members of the EDC here, is that the funds are, the way we set it up, because it's not a town-run event, it was set up through the Downtown Improvement and Events Trust, which all the revenues for the fair go in that, all the expenses are paid out of that. And any excess stays in that trust, which is then allocated through the EDC for their initiatives. So their concern is that's their budget dollar, so that's their concern. And I won't speak for them, but that's why they're here. I will say that in some of our meetings, the Street Fair Committee has said that we would like to have, or the committee as a whole would like to have some input, not decide where the money goes, but make recommendations. EDC absolutely said that's not a problem, and we can work through that if it's still going through the Downtown Improvement Trusts. So that's it in a nutshell. Anything John wants to add, or anyone else from the Street Fair Committee, but our two main goals are to make it so we can work efficiently, and so it's a long-standing community event run by the town. Those are our goals. Any questions?
Questions?
I just attended one meeting, I think it was last fall, or maybe it was late
In the
last summer. And I have to say, nothing against any other board or committee, but there can't be a better run one than this one, honestly. It was only one meeting, maybe they're putting on a show, I don't know.
Yeah.
But talk about a well-oiled machine. Every single one of them knew their responsibilities. They knew lists of vendors. Truly, this is not a function that works in the same sense as open, transparent government. Right. It is, by its nature, things that are done not in that room. Go call these 10 vendors, go call these 20 vendors, go get all the different input as to, You know, I'm sure Steve has to deal with it, well, I don't wanna be next to them, I wanna be next to them. It's not the typical open government kind of function. It's things meant to be done, if you will, in the back room. And it was clear that they were doing a great job as a practical matter, and that this function that they had to organize under open government was slowing them down to some degree, and it's up to them, I think, to tell you how much. I couldn't say. But they're certainly very effective and very efficient.
One of the hardest parts is recruiting and then placing vendors. And in the past, we had vendor placement at Sheila's house, and then we now do the vendor placement meetings because we have to do it in a public meeting. And if it's part of not town government, not open meeting law, we could be doing that vendor placement throughout. And we don't have to wait till the end or to one point, and then it'd just be a lot easier. That's just one example.
I can certainly sympathize, I understand, because there are certain things that you're restricted from doing if you're in a public meeting, but they're not necessarily related, they're not gonna add any value in terms of open meeting law and what the public is informed by. It's not something, like you said, where you're
Right.
making decisions that impact government.
And yeah, none of the decisions, if it's town government, we don't now, but we wouldn't have any input into the allocation of the money. Meaning, we would have input, but we wouldn't make decisions on that, so there's really no need for open meeting law at this point anyway. Because we don't allocate that money. The money comes in, the money comes out, but those are expenses that we've had every year, and it's mainly town staff anyway, so. Anything you wanted to add?
I really don't have much to add. The only comment I had, just in terms of the funding, it does, to me, it's irrelevant. Whether we're a board, committee, and commission, or a volunteer staff, it's irrelevant. We'll serve and work. Reading Recreation will be involved with it no matter what. It's too good of an event to step away from, obviously, and we wanted to see it sustain, and we wanted to see it thrive as we go through the future. So that to us is irrelevant. To me, it was just trying to keep up with all the open, when we get to the nitty gritty of August and we're trying to decide what's gonna go on, where we're gonna meet, it just, the amount of emails that you gotta put out just becomes so cumbersome that it just, and that's when I pulled Steve aside last year, Steve, we've gotta really think hard about this. Because it's just too hard for me to try to facilitate a meeting every week and then turn minutes around and post meetings. It was just, and it was unnecessary.
Right.
That was kind of my feeling on it.
I do want to say, like, I really appreciate the town fair and what that has grown into, and all the people who volunteered on that. Just, it's such a tremendous event, and it just gets better every year. There's more and more people out there, and it's really, it's such a great reflection of our town. You know, it's definitely something that, and I can understand how that might be a problem in recruiting volunteers if you can't ever, you know, everybody has to be together at the same time. You can't. I mean,
Try
the
doing that in the
reality is
summer,
you need
too.
to coordinate a lot of things through email. It makes it a lot easier these days, so.
It just seems to me like it's kind of a no-brainer that you move to the next chapter.
Right.
Is there an unintended consequence that, you know,
The
we're not
one-
thinking of?
The one, I guess the one thing that you need to think about, and why the Economic Development Commission here is the financials. And the reason is that the fair does generate excess revenues every year. It does. And truly, that's to your discretion on what you want to do with it. Though right now it's under their purview, but they're a commission of you as well. So that's the real main thing that you really need to think about. A couple options: continue the way it's going. I don't know logistically how that works. If it's a town-run event, we'd have to sit with Sharon and figure that out. Second is set up a revolving fund. Town meeting would have to approve that to handle all the revenues and expenses, and then you direct any excess from there.
There's no real practical way for us to put this through the recreation revolving fund. There would actually be a lot of unintended consequences with us doing that. It would actually raise the threshold of our database, and it just doesn't make sense for it. So it either stays in its present place or we start a new revolving fund.
A new revolving fund, yeah, I absolutely don't recommend going through recreation.
But it sounds like, you know, the big challenge is your continued ability to be able to recruit and retain the right kind of volunteers.
Correct.
In its present format.
Exactly.
And that, to me, is a big reason to move forward with this.
Right.
It seems like to me, unless I'm
And
missing something that,
You're
you know,
spot on.
which, you know, I guess we're gonna
That's
hear.
gonna be seamless. If you're relying on the same 5 to 7 people that are appointed by the board, and those are the only ones that can make decisions, it makes it, there right there is a logistical nightmare. trying to depend on those same people. If you can have people coming somewhat in and out each year,
Right.
it does make things a little bit easier.
And that raises a good point. We have more than 5 volunteers.
Right.
So we have 5 voting members, and we have
11.
minimum of 5 others, 6 others who
Yeah.
volunteer as well. And they want to have input as well, but
They don't have a voice.
they do, but officially
I
they
mean, they have
don't.
a voice, but
Officially
they
they don't. They don't have
I
a
don't
vote,
mean that they don't have a
Right.
vote.
which doesn't make any sense either.
I'm
Right.
always puzzled actually by associate membership boards. I don't really understand that whole concept, but,
The minor leagues of the board. Held up to the same number of votes.
which makes sense for some
Succession
boards, but
planning,
I don't
yeah.
know about all of them.
Are there any concerns that the board would have about bringing this to a hearing and moving forward? I'm trying to close you guys.
I'm not-
I guess,
Well, can you hang on just a second, but let's just, we're gonna give you a chance to talk in a minute, but
I'm hearing nothing that I have
based on
concern
what
about.
we've heard, I've not heard anything. Now, EDC, you guys would like to speak, I'm assuming, and would somebody like to come up front and speak?
I don't want to talk, I'd talk.
You don't wanna come
I'll
up
be
front?
fine where I'm at. I'm okay.
I can get it.
Okay.
Meeting Young, EDC, member of the Reading Fall Street Fair Committee 4 out of 5 years, and passionate about what it did and what it's become. I think it's wonderful. I think that the history of the fair was that it was funded by the Downtown Steering Committee initially. That was a not-for-profit that existed about 10 years prior. Corporation that existed 10 years prior. And then the funds were moved the second year into the EDC through the diet. The town that the town meeting approved, right? So what we were told at the time was that there were 2 actual choices. One is that money can be received as a not-for-profit corporation for the Fall Street Fair, or it had to be a town committee, or it had to be through a town place. So we had one of 2 choices. If you do a not-for-profit, like Steve's choice is an excellent choice, is the Friends and Family Day is done through the Lions Club. Money goes through the Lions Club, and everything is done through a not-for-profit. So even though it is a quote town event, it's all done through a not-for-profit. For this particular Reading Fall Street Fair, it is done through the town now, right? And by that, because the money's come into the town, we were told that open meeting law applies, right? So could you give privilege to someone that gives you more money and a location better than, blah, 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 right? So there's open meeting laws that apply there. So that's how we always understood, is that those were the only 2 choices that we had. So the EDC operated it on its own and had, like, I think it was Denise and Leslie Leahy were our original people, but primarily the EDC shut down and ran the Fall Street Fair the first year. The second year, it became, anyway, bottom line is, it's been through the EDC. This is the first year. I mean, Carl has always been, I think 4 out of 5 years, a part of the Fall Street Fair. But the part that's always been missing is, after putting all that time and energy and hundreds of hours of volunteer work, that there's no input into where that money goes. The money always has been into the downtown in support of the downtown. So the building facade improvement program, the retail visioning, the flowers, all of that is paid for by the Fall Street Fair. So it was always about whatever money was made, whatever it is, it goes back into the downtown and it supports that thriving community that we want to support through the master plan. So I think that that's I love that, one, that if the town, if John's group is paid for the work that they do, that's fine, because that is actually associated to the fact that we pay the DPW and we pay the fire department every year for their services, and they're probably 50% of the expenses that we incur, if not
Well, higher.
100% of the
Yeah.
expenses that we
It's like
incur.
8,
So
90%.
I have absolutely no trouble with that. I would absolutely love it to be open meeting if it could occur. I just don't know, Bob, if in fact, because the monies come into the town, if in fact open meeting law applies just because the monies are coming into the town. That's what I was told, we were told originally. So that's kind of what I wanted to put out to you all is that in fact true or not? Like, is the only choice you either become a not-for-profit or you have to stay in town? If you're in town, you have to deal with open meeting laws or not. I think that's the biggest concern. I love everything. I'm a huge advocate of open meeting laws not applying to this group, but I'm just wondering how we get around it if in fact, the money is coming into the town.
If I may, it's not a group at that point,
But it is.
right? No, it's a recreation function, and he asked for volunteers to help. Again, I think this is something we need.
I mean, I think it's something the lawyers can give you guidance on, and I think
That's-
it's worth looking into.
It does sound like something that we would want town council to look into. Yes,
I guess I would just point out that if the group that's organizing the street fair isn't making any decisions on where money is coming or going, then it wouldn't make any sense that that attribute of money coming into the town through the fair requires it to be an open meeting. You've got the EDC as a group of the Board of Selectmen, which does comply with the open meeting law, and they're the ones that are ultimately going to be distributing the money. All we're looking for is to have that flexibility without the open meeting law, and potentially to help in making help the EDC in making those choices of where they will ultimately make those distributions. So I think that there's a difference in what we're trying to do and from what Egan was saying.
I got to just say, relative to the funding, you don't need much upfront funding, if any.
Right.
And without that, without a needing for upfront money, you at the end of the fair make a gift to the town, as the downtown steering committee did in the first place.
That's if we were a separate
That's if
committee.
you were
Right.
a not-for-profit.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about money coming into the town. You're making money as
It's
an
the appropriation
independent
of the
group.
money.
It's not, no, the money's going into the town.
Right.
It's going
We-
into it as a gift.
We're not proposing to set up a separate 501c3 or corporation.
I think it'd be great if it worked, and
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, that's, this committee didn't, we discussed and we voted to disband the committee.
I'm not going to be speaking for the whole committee with this comment, just my own personal views as a member and chairman of the EDC. I honestly don't care what you do with that committee, as long as the funding is going to be made available to our committee to do the initiatives that we need to do that we think are in the long-term benefits of the town. You know, in all honesty, although I'm perfectly willing to help with certain aspects of the street fair with areas that I'm competent in professionally, I didn't join the EDC to run the fall street fair, if you follow me. The fact that our funding for our initiatives is funded by the proceeds from the street fair, I mean, and like I said, this is my own personal view, if you take the diet away from us, or make that like this straight street fair fund or whatever, I would hope that there would be funds allocated for this committee to continue with the initiatives, you know, so, you know, yes.
can you remind me what diet means? I know you
Downtown-
guys all know it,
Downtown
but I never can
improvement
remember it.
and
I just
events
think of like
trust.
eating less food, and I know that's not what it means.
Did you get that?
Downtown
Downtown Improvements and Events Trust.
Okay.
Eating well,
What?
eating well,
Eating well.
not dieting.
I think, you know, from my interaction with the street fair committee though, having to get all 12 people in a room every week, especially in
summer.
August when you're in the
Yeah.
summer, and it was usually a Monday and people were away on vacation, and I just think that
It's hard.
it
Well,
was
it's
just,
something like what's been going on is that you guys have been tolerating each other for your own mutual end. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, you're
I mean,
right. I agree.
You know, Carl, you're saying Just fund us, will you?
Yeah.
Stay going, get us out of this public meeting thing. You guys
Yeah.
are in a bad marriage. And, you know, I mean.
Actually, it's a good Carl.
Well, I mean, well,
Stories.
you have nice
I
children.
get the house.
Okay.
It's for the children.
Friends with benefits.
So I do have a question that's related to funding and programs, which I asked the last time you guys were here officially to
Yes, we
do,
have the
which is,
results.
when are we gonna get results? When?
Well, I've got, we should send them to you because I'm a big proponent of those same things. And so we
Yes.
have, for the building facade improvement, for the retail visioning, we have, not only surveys, but we also have our own, like, what we did well, how we spent our money, results and objectives, and what we did different each year. So we should just send those to
Okay,
you.
great.
But
Are there
that-
other programs besides those two?
Those are the primary ones
That's
that.
the primary places that you spend your
Right,
funds?
and
Right.
really, those, both of those are really just steals from what the state has, we've gone to that are best practices within the state. So we've just kind of followed some of the ideas that they've had in the state about how to help downtown, like small businesses, and emulated those kind of things. So did it make a difference? You hope, right? But at least we weren't hurting. We were helping businesses try to do things like signage or how they can improve the look and feel of their business and that kind of thing. So that's probably what you'll see when you see our results.
We didn't have quorum for our April meeting. So at our next meeting, we're gonna be going over the results of the survey that we put out there, and then back it up with any personal contacts with people, and we will present that after we've had a chance to review
Yeah.
the results of.
So-
And you have a
So
big
what's your
event coming
target?
up
What-
too, right? I mean, you
Excuse
have a
me?
big event coming up on May 5th,
Yes, that's part of the EDSAT,
right?
Economic Development Self-Awareness tool, EDSAT. I think, well, our next meeting is the first Wednesday of May, so we can certainly have it for you at your next meeting after that.
Great.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you've been consistent on that ask, and I've
Yeah.
been consistent on,
Mhm.
I'm a big numbers and results person too, so we've got some good stuff for you.
Great.
So do I understand, at least I understand from you, Carl, what the motivation is? You don't really care about this Fall Street Committee as long as you have funding. I mean, is that the general consensus?
I don't-
The alimony continues.
Well,
I-
I think that's bottom line, yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, I think the one
I
thing
care
that-
very much about the success of the street fair as a resident of this community. As a member of the EDC, I am concerned about funding the initiatives that I think we need to do.
And they aren't
going forward.
necessarily, they're actually mutually exclusive, it sounds like. I mean, it sounds like you might be a guy that would volunteer, or other members of the EDC
Yeah.
would happily become part of the merry band of volunteers, you know, promoting the street fair.
I think we all were.
We all have been.
I know you
Yeah,
have
but
been,
no,
so.
no, I think that all and I think it's to a good point, is you get burnout and you need to refresh yourself and come back to it too.
Well, it gets difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a personal experience, you know, in trying to help and join, and there was, the public meeting laws got in the way, frankly.
Yeah.
And I think that, so I do understand how that can happen. And so, so it doesn't sound as though, I don't think I'm hearing a lot of objection to the concept of them being out of public, out
Are you
of, you know, the
kidding?
open
I
meeting.
think it'd be lovely,
Okay, so.
Okay.
personally.
Oh, yeah. no.
Well, I think that's an easy,
I think it's just a legal legal
We have to figure out how to do that.
concerns.
Right.
Just to remind everyone in the room, it was only a few years ago, when the Fall Street Fair Committee started and the event started, it was probably thought as a one-year event. There certainly wasn't a plan to have surplus, which then would go to the EDC. That was a happenstance. It was a nice outcome.
I think that you feel that way, I think that Pete
Yeah.
felt this way, I think the two co-chairs at the time always wanted to make money.
Sure,
And
wanted
always
to,
wanted
but
to do it more than one year.
That's not why the Fall Street Fair got created, I guess.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't that.
So there are very different thoughts. It worked out well, but the board really needs to wrestle with the concept of economic development in a much broader sense.
in a much broader sense, absolutely.
We don't want to rely on one small source of funding, quite frankly. It's a nice happenstance that it all worked out, But this is a much bigger issue, and whether it does or does not end up being a big issue and a big spend a year is something we all need to talk about. But now, you know, it's, I don't know, $20,000 a year that is vital, because that's all there is. You know, if there are hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, this would be less of an issue. So I think that's a bigger issue that the board needs to wrestle with this summer.
Amen.
Yes.
Not just.
No, not
Not
everybody in
just.
here is a volunteer, just about everybody in
We're very
here.
fortunate that we've had the weather's been on our side, but, you know, we're, you know, kind of playing Russian roulette here with, we're gonna have one of those years where we're not gonna have the weather, and then you're not gonna have that surplus.
That's it.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, just trying to be, letting
That's
you know
realistic.
that, it's
Yeah.
being realistic that,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
if you're really just depending on this one event to fund for the
Exactly.
year, it's,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is.
So, sounds like, I'll close up our piece, but it sounds like the board and everyone's in agreement on this.
Yeah.
If you
We'll
could,
post a hearing.
I'll ask, have to start gearing up.
Yep.
It's time, and, so if we could start that process and move down that path, so we can make sure that the fair is running fine this year.
I'll need to sit down with Sharon and get some financial counsel on what the best vehicle is. That's okay, you go.
Stop her.
That, and we need town council in terms of open meeting law,
Yep.
and any kind of ramifications, if there's any
Yeah,
side
if they
pieces of
wanted to
that.
form a 501(c) and gift the money, that'd be simple.
Right.
But to do it a different way, we just need some.
But then that's got its own complication.
That
Yeah,
does
yeah,
have
I was
its
gonna
own
say that- that's not
complications.
really
No,
simple.
Simple
that's
from
not
the
really
town's
simple.
perspective.
Simple for the town.
No, simple
Yeah.
for you.
Not simple for me, that's why we're not doing it.
Yes, I don't blame you on this. I know what
Okay.
goes into it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your
Thanks, Steve.
time.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you for your comments, appreciate
Till
it.
Friday.
All right, so now we have a recreation update.
You need the,
Yeah, I'm
overhead.
gonna, I gotta pull up my thumb drive here.
What is that?
It's the phone system, and
That's somebody listening.
Oh, there it is.
I think it is. It's not,
There's no Bluetooth component to that.
it's ready to be dialed in.
Oh, is there a Bluetooth?
I'm asking if
Well,
that's a
if
possibility.
somebody's listening in, it is an open meeting, so listen
Fine.
away, right? But it's very odd.
Was John Arena trying
Yeah,
to call
that's
in
what I
or something?
Did he say he was gonna participate remotely at,
He said he was wide awake at 3 a.m. I don't
yeah,
know.
so he's probably sound asleep now. He's supposed to be getting up for his
I
meeting.
don't think he ever actually sleeps. I know. He's one of those guys that hangs from the ceiling.
All
I'm
right,
not sure I have a clicker. So I'm so happy to be
This-
here
this
and
should
very
do it.
excited to present. Okay. Do you want me to get the
Yeah.
you can move up now.
Were you afraid of those people, Irene?
So, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I know we have some brand new board members, but I think both Marcy and Dan are new since probably the last time I presented anything really recreation-wise, just in general. So Bob asked me to come in and I'm going to stand up just because my back is bothering me and I would like to move around so it keeps me loose. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what Reading Recreation does, some of the things we've been cooking up, and I also want to talk about what we have going for the future and some of those prospects. And if there's any questions or any comments as we go, feel free to stop me. It's fairly long, and I've got a guest here as well, which I'll introduce in just a couple of minutes. So I'll get started with the...
You have two guests.
I do have two guests, and I'm going to introduce both of them, as a matter of fact. So I'll just give you a quick outline of topics. Is there a clicker for this?
Try the mouse.
That didn't work.
Yeah, let me fiddle with it.
Well, anyway, this is Bob's favorite. If you want to you want to drive for me? That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, right there. Right
Oh.
there. Right there is good. So just a quick outline. I'm going to give you a quick overview of my staff. Talk about the Birch Meadow Master Plan, which I'm sure some of you are a little versed in. I'm going to hopefully get you a little bit more versed. Some of capital improvement projects going on in recreation for this year and for next fiscal year. I'll touch upon programming, what we've been up to as far as keeping our residents entertained. Field space successes and challenges is one of the bigger parts of my job, especially this time of year. A lot of people are curious about Matera Cabin. I heard Marcy didn't know we had plumbing there. We do have full plumbing.
Oh, no, that wasn't me. You're getting me confused with somebody else.
So I'll be glad to talk a little bit about Matera Cabin.
I've used the plumbing material. I know it's there.
Very good. And I've got a special guest joining us in a little bit, Carl McFadden, to talk about the Ice Authority. Irene Collins is here from the Burbank YMCA, and I've got my staff member, Jenna Fiorente, here. So we'll do all of our introductions as we go through. Just a quick division overview. So we have 3 full-time staff members, myself as the administrator. Jenna's our program coordinator. She handles all of the program that you see in our book. And Sue Samiola, who really keeps it all together. Sue's our clerk, and if anyone's been down our office, she knows that she really runs point and keeps us going. We have approximately 60 employees throughout the year that are seasonal, so many of them are high school students, people just around town. I'd say 98% of our staff are from Reading. Absent is our new outdoor rec coordinator, who's actually from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He comes down for 10 hours a week right now to plan outdoor recreation programs, which we had our first one today at the Matera Cabin, which was fabulous. Yeah, we had a scavenger hunt in the woods, and we actually, part of the scavenger hunt, we had them pick up trash. So we picked up 500 pieces of trash today in Bear Meadow, if anyone asks. So, and we got them to do it for free, which is even better. So it was a great deal. The renovation projects, just talk a little bit about our capital improvement. I'm sure you're aware of the capital improvement plan. We have a 10 to 12 year outlook. Recreation's not shy on that. We have a lot of projects on there, not only this year, but coming up in the next 3 to 5 years. We're currently planning for Washington Park's renovation. That's going to bring us a brand new tennis court and a brand new basketball court, along with a nice entryway into the park. So we've done a nice job over the last 3 years cleaning it up. There was a lot of misbehavior going on over there for a number of years, and we think the new playground and all these new amenities have really brought some positive activity into the park, and we're actually seeing less vandalism there because of it, which is great. So we're proud to be doing that. Memorial Park, we're looking to do lights for the skating area. We're finalizing LED lights with some non-telephone looking poles. So we're going to have it look great. Wires will be below ground. We'll be lit for next year for skating season. So that's great news. So we're excited about that. And finally, next year, we're going to be working on one of our eyesores in town, which is the Killam Elementary School baseball field. And one of the things that's always bothered me about that is a lot of people come into Reading through Haverhill and Franklin Street, and they see that, and it just doesn't reflect Reading. So to be able to do the backstop and redo that field over there, I think is a huge coup for the town to be able to do. The Birch Meadow Master Plan, this is where we'll slow down a little bit. Maybe 6 months ago, Bob asked the Recreation Committee through the Board of Selectmen to take that on and really review it. So we've been kind of touching upon that since then at our future meetings. The direction we'd like to head in with that project is to evaluate the current inventory on the plan. When I looked at the plan, we probably built it 5 to 6 years ago. It was a solid plan, but there were a lot of misnomers in the plan, and there were some things that now have just become obsolete. They're not the town's priority that they were 6 years ago. We have Imagination Station set up to be a playground again. We have 11 playgrounds in town. It probably is far more functional as a continued parking lot. If you've been down there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you see that we probably couldn't live without it. It's very, very important even on Saturdays and Sundays when we have events down there. So there are things like that. We've got, and I'll show you the plan in just a moment, but we've talked about flipping fields for $1.2 million, and I just don't see $1.2 million worth of value in that. So I would like to reevaluate some of those. There's some opportunity to do some other great things. We're landlocked, as most of you know. So the only way to create more space is to either turf synthetically or to add lights. So we have some potential opportunities to look at locations for both synthetic field and for lights that I'd like to talk about. So those are both, those are just some of the ways we'd like to look at the plan and reprioritize some of the changes that are actually part of our inventory. We'd like to prioritize this based on feasibility, desirability, and sustainability are kind of the 3 goals of what we're trying to do. And Bob and I had invited Irene Collins in, and some of you folks may be new to Irene. She's the executive director of the YMCA. She's been there for 3 years? 2 years. And we've had many conversations, and we actually talked today, and we said it would be great to incorporate a plan like this with the Y. They've got some plans and we've got some plans. It would be great to see if our plans work together, and they might be able to solve something that's causing us an issue, and we would be able to solve something that's causing them an issue. So it almost makes too much sense for us to get together and to be part of this group. So Irene and I will have some successive conversations and get her involved with the Recreation Committee, and whatever steering that we do with the committee, will certainly have Irene and her staff involved with it. So we're looking forward to that. I just wanted to...
Just a sec.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Just on that point, some of the board members are new. When the prior board discussed this, they discussed Birch Meadow Master Plan sort of under the recreation purview, but then additionally the Birch Meadow area, which would include the Y, which would include Arthur B. Lord Drive, which would include the 3 schools down there as to parking and safety. So the board always expected and knew that it would come back to them in some fashion on a bigger scale, that the Recreation Committee wasn't about to solve parking and transportation issues. Sorry, John.
So this is just kind of a sneak peek. We don't have enough time tonight, and John was kind enough to mention that you'll be doing possibly quarterly retreats in the future, and if I could maybe spend some time with you on a Saturday, and I'd be glad to go through this really in depth with you. And I think it would take more than a 15 or 20 minute presentation for really you to understand where the committee was with this when it was built, and sort of the thinking behind some of it. And we did solve a lot of problems with this, and I think we've got a decent plan. There are, like I said, there are some things that I would change. I would certainly eliminate that back to a parking lot. And I think looking back at this and knowing the history of how this evolved, it does not make sense based on what it would cost for us to do it. When we initially talked about this area being flip-flop, we talked about maybe taking some of Castine Field along with it, and then it does make sense. So going back to the table, if we can make that work, then it would be something that's viable. If not, I don't think it's a real feasible plan to try to do that. We have Morton Field, which is the, I think, only unlit field. I'm sorry, these 2 fields are the only 2 unlit areas. We have lights here, here, along here, on this field, on this area, and on our tennis courts currently. So the addition of lights on both those areas would extend playability, and that I'm going to talk about that in some of our challenges. Is any hour or 2 that we can get on a field just makes perfect sense for us, and it's something that we really struggle for. So we're happy to be able to get some of that. We've talked about the master plan, and I think that whole project that you just saw was about a $2.6 million venture. Everything included lights, any changes that we talked about. Well, one of the issues we have is we're not protecting our assets. And for a small amount of money, I think we could do that. And I think that's something that I would love for the board to really think about and discuss. And we're not trying to be a big brother with our security system, but I've gone down there too many times to find spray paint on my green building that our DPW staff has to go down and repaint, and just the man hours that go into some of the stuff that goes on. Or something as simple as who left the lights on last night. We can just find out. So it's as simple as that. I think it's just the peace of mind of knowing that you can check from home if you needed to on a remote access on a computer would be a huge asset to us, and could solve some of the issues that we've had. Luckily, we haven't had any major issues, but I think about our synthetic turf fields, and we just recently had someone pull fibers out of our field at Parker Middle School in 5 very, very small spots. That's an expense to us that we're going to have to fix, because you can't just leave it there. We've got to fix it. But my thought was, what if someone went down with a...
Don't say it.
I won't say it, but what if someone did? You know, there's a lot of money tied into that, and it would be nice to be able to hold someone accountable for it. So I think cameras are a real necessity going forward. I live in the town of Tewksbury. We've got 15 cameras around our athletic complex. They can zoom right into a license plate, and I think you couldn't ask for anything better than that. So just something to get in the forefront of our minds. It might be something we want to get on the capital plan going forward. Now I'm going to get to a little bit of a happier subject, is our programming. As you probably have seen, we do 3 catalogs a year. We do a summer, spring, and fall catalog series. We take a lot of pride in making it look professional and making it look good. We'll actually go to state conferences and boast that our programming manuals are as good as you're going to find in the state. And
I think you should tell them what Westwood did.
Well, the Westwood Recreation Director actually called me and was looking for a lot of advice on his catalog. It was internally, it was our old town manager facility that didn't get the. It was actually nice to turn the tables. If you're watching Peace Soccer, it's nice to turn the tables on it. So that was great. So, as I mentioned, we're offering over 200 different activities. That's a tribute to Jenna. Since she's been here for 2 years, we've probably added maybe 30% to our output in terms of offering activities. We had 6,300 enrolled last year versus just under 5,000 the year before. And many of those are residents too, which is phenomenal. We do allow out-of-town people to help populate and to help our programs run. We had 900 first-time enrollees this year, which is a huge number. And we're getting people ages 2 to 64, and actually, that's just reported. Some people lie, and if they're old enough, we just put in that they're age 64, and we don't even ask them. So, and we have an 82% registration rate online, which is awesome. It really cuts down on the amount of office time we spend dealing with people at the window. People are able to go on and get assistance. So that's worked out great. Thanks, Bob. I just want to mention Reading Community Tennis Courts. Order on the court has been restored. We had a small problem when we built them. They were too nice, and we had people coming from all over the state. So we came up with a pass system as a problem solve. We made it very nominal for the residents to participate at $10 per person or $25 for a whole house, or $100 for a non-resident. And that has seemed to have scared many of the non-residents away. We have a monitor down there Monday through Friday, basically the end of May to the beginning of September, and that has worked out great, Monday through Friday. That seemed to have skewed, and now the word is out, and it's actually helped support. That money that has come in has actually helped support having the monitor staff down there, so that's been really great. We're working with the Recreation Committee right now to move to a software system for court reservation. We're maybe testing that out over the next few months for a Saturday, Sunday situation. That's where someone can actually go and reserve the court online and pay a small fee. And that would obviously lock up the court for you. So that's something that's kind of on the horizon for the Recreation Committee. I'll jump into field space really quickly. Field space, we currently have over 2,500 residents participating in 12 recognized adult and youth sports organizations. It's through the roof. This is a very sports-oriented town. People love their sport. I invite you to go down to the First Window Complex any night of the week and see it for yourself. Transparency of our field allocation. One of the things that I did and took away from the Board of Selectmen several years ago was transparency. So we actually have the field schedule on a Google Doc online, living on the internet. So anyone with the link can actually go see it. And all you need to simply do is either have it passed along to you or you call my office and you can have access to it. So that's pretty cool, and people know that the allocation is very, very fair. And it's actually helped me in terms of helping other people understand how that works, so it's been great. My biggest job is balancing the current demands of the needs of the organizations and field availability. Additional lights, as I mentioned, have helped. We've done that in 2 different locations, looking to do that in others. Creative scheduling to maximize space has been a must. And I have to say the organizations are phenomenal. I've had them spend upwards of $40,000, $50,000 just to replace infields, put up fences where needed. We have a scoreboard that was donated to Morton Field several years back. There's been a few things that have happened that have benefited our Babe Ruth group, our high school group, our youth little leagues, our youth soccer. Reading United Soccer last year renovated basically the gut of Longwood Field. It cost them probably $20,000 to put brand new bluegrass sod back in, and that field looks awesome when you drive by there. So without that, we'd be playing on dust and in dead grass. So we have a lot of them to thank. So our challenges is still very similar to how they were 4 or 5 years ago. We're still trying to respond to organizations' growth. They're growing exponentially, but our field space is remaining the same. So we've had to become more savvy. Reading United Soccer, Reading Youth Lacrosse have both gone to a mass night. And when I say mass night, mass Premier Soccer or mass lacrosse come in and do a clinic for all the kids. So they get 5, 6 practice groups all in the same place at the same time. So instead of needing 2 places for everyone, now one of their practice nights is all condensed into one night. That's strategy. That's using our fields to the best of our ability and really thinking it through, and not being kind of frivolous in terms of everyone thinking they can get 2 practices every single week. Responding to field expectations has been a challenge because they're getting better, and as they get better, people expect more. Coolidge Middle School, when I got here, was gold. If they could play behind Coolidge, it was gold. I had people playing on tennis courts. They were playing lacrosse on tennis courts 12 years ago. Now they're playing on synthetic fields. So their need for better fields is growing, and it's growing because the quality of what we have in Reading. So it was actually a very interesting point to watch kind of matriculate over the last 5 or 6 years. And then investigate in new or adapt current sites to recreation use, and that's looking back at the master plan, additional lights as I mentioned, or looking at synthetic situations. One of the things I'm just going to mention there, and I should have touched on it in the master plan, is talking about the pavilion and having the opportunity to put some kind of concession stand down there. I really think that could generate revenue. There's hundreds of people down there per night, and I think having a revenue stream coming into that could really help maybe fund some of the things that we're talking about
It
tonight.
would create jobs and educational
It would.
opportunities for
Yep.
our high school students. There's a lot of,
Yep.
there's a lot that can happen with that kind of a thing.
Yeah, there could be, that's a great point. There could be a lot of employment. I could see hiring high school students, after school to come out and work.
One of the things that's, I've visited the Birch Meadow of Lexington. And, it's very active. There's
Yep.
stuff going, it's just like our Birch Meadow is, it's very active.
Yep.
The difference is there's bathrooms and concession stands and,
Wasn't there a sort of a failed attempt to put concession stands on? What did we learn from that?
That was the green shed.
Right. Oh, yes.
That was so long ago, to be quite honest, Dan. I wasn't here for that. I can tell you that the window's on the wrong side of the building, so when you stand there getting your
True.
hot dog, there could be
hit
a
with
screaming
foul
line
balls,
drive for
right.
me. So there are some design flaws with it, but I also don't think it had. That project wasn't backed by the town.
Set you right on that.
There's actually, I think, a standing toilet in there still, but there's no plumbing to it. So, but I think that was part of the problem, is it wasn't supported by the town. It was a group, and you got to remember, this is 20 years ago. We weren't nearly as sophisticated as we were, and someone probably came in and said, we'd like to do this. Sounds like a good idea. Go ahead and do it. It wasn't. I don't think it was completely backed by any government
Yeah, I
body.
think the
So.
price is right. It was free.
It was. It was built by volunteers. I still own that eyesore. It's actually still pretty functional. So Bob asked me to just do a quick field inventory just to give you an overview of what we've got. So we have 3 90-foot baseball diamonds. That's the same size the Red Sox would play on. We've got 5 softball fields, and we use the term skinned-in fields. That means there's no grass. It's just clay. We've got 5 60-foot baseball diamonds. Those are grassed-in fields. They're flat with no pitched mound. That's for, say, a Little League situation. And we have 2 large multi-purpose fields, 3 synthetic turf fields, and we have a small multi-purpose field at Longwood Place that we actually lease. We have a 100-year lease for $1 with that building. So Simon's Way, Castine Field, the high school softball fields are all mixed by season, depending on the season. It really depends on the use. And Memorial Park really lends itself to being unscheduled. I had a Boy Scout group come in today and say, "Can we do our rocket launch down there?" I said, "Sure, do a civic function permit. I'm going to put you on the calendar and go have at it." So we don't schedule anything down there. People still use it, and it seems to be a great source for people to be able to get out and get some fresh air. Some field fee background information. We collect about $50,000 from the youth organizations in field fees each year. The way that gets allocated is $20,000 is used to supplement the DPW and park staff with some seasonal help. So we kick basically a staff member for April to October, I'll say, and that really helps the parks department keep up with the cutting, the grooming, and the trash removal. And the funding source also covers some of my time. I spend probably about 30% of my time in the springtime, especially with our athletic director and our youth organizations, making sure that things get shifted on the schedule properly, and that also carries over to the summer and the fall. I'm going to talk about Matera Cabin, but I wanted to share this email that I got on Saturday with whoever's watching at home and the board. I'll read it to you, even though I know everyone can read here. I wanted to write before any time goes by and say thank you for your help arranging our use of Matera Cabin for our son's birthday party today. We had a great time. We had snacks at the cabin, and we were headed out for a nature walk. I gave the kids a scavenger hunt, magnifying glass, bug box, toilet paper roll, as binoculars to use, and they had a blast running around and checking out things. They even saw a snake. I guess that was pretty cool. We came back to the cabin for dirt cups for dessert. Sounds very appetizing. It was really a fun party and something a little different. We're really glad the town provides such a nice facility for us it's such a nice facility for easy, affordable use by residents. Everyone today had a great time. So I thought that was that Matera Cabin really in a nutshell. It's a lot of work to administrate it. I won't sit here and tell stories. We do about 32 private rentals thus far this year, and that's up from last year. It's getting so much use. I get a call almost daily or an email almost daily of people that want to use it. We've had many municipal uses. Jenna uses it probably once a week for some type of a program. Certainly the Y, if they would like to, could certainly use it. We've had school department meetings there. I've had recreation committee meetings, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Trails Committee, everyone uses it. Revenues haven't quite covered our costs, but they are increasing every year. I think we did about 1,000 the first year, 1,500 the second. I think we're gonna probably get over $2,000 this year in revenue. So it's continuing to pick up. Well, we're not quite there. We'd like to see about $3,000 in that revolving fund every year. We're not quite getting there yet, but we are trying to cut costs wherever possible. I am the maintenance guy. I actually clean the toilets and sweep the floors. I could pay someone to do it, but it's just simpler to save a little money. And we do. Jenna actually, she shovels too. We chip ice and we go up there and do the maintenance for it. So, you know, it is a nice facility. If you haven't been in there yet, I would urge you to have your retreat there. If you have an opportunity to do that, that would be great. And Bob had also asked me to mention regionalization. We had some surface conversations with Wakefield about possibly regionalizing. They stood without a recreation director for a very long time. They have a part-time help that just run their summer program, and it's a very, very part-time job. In fact, it's two teachers
High school teachers, yeah.
that basically just do it for the summer, and then they wash their hands with it, and they come back next summer. So we met with their town administrator. He was very interested. We took that conversation to another level with the Recreation Committee and had a joint meeting with their commission. Meeting went well. It was clear that they were unsure what direction they wanted to head in. In the meantime, Wakefield has gone and hired an interim director. I am working with him kind of as consulting with him on a volunteer basis, just trying to troubleshoot with him and give him some advice as he goes forward. He's expected to be in there for a year, and then they're looking to hire a full staff similar to what we have in town. We will continue to look to do some collaboration. And one of the things we talked about was sharing vendors. So if we're using a science group to run a program for us, and we're using that, or they're using the same science group, why not just partner? It's great to have 15, and Irene can talk to this as well. It's great to have 15 or 20 in a program rather than 8. Just maybe you can run it for 8, but it's just more fun when there's 20 kids there, because you're going to have more kids across the demographic of the grade situation. So. What's next? What's going to pop up? That would be the end. That's what I thought. So are there any questions?
That's very good.
Looks like you've got a lot. You're juggling a lot.
I tried to go fast because I don't want to keep you here till 11 o'clock. So I'm glad to answer any questions you might have. Hey, Carl. Right on cue.
Yeah, right on cue, yeah.
That was good.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Very informative.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you
it
very
was
much.
very informative.
Thank you.
so.
I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Carl McFadden as he walks through the door. Carl is the town's liaison to the Reading Ice Arena Authority, and he's here to just give you a brief update on the happenings of the Burbank Ice Arena and anything else he has cooking.
Good evening. Geez, I'm early, I'm on time.
You're on time.
That's because I went fast, Carl.
Yeah.
Good evening. As John mentioned, Carl McFadden, 33 Wakefield Street. I'm your liaison till the end of June and reapplied, and hopefully I can beat out Mr. Blank and get reappointed. That would be great. As you know, I know there's some new members. I know Mr. Halsey and I were able to have lunch with Mr. Burbank the other day, who gave his 20-year memory of everything that's taken place down there. One of the things that, I guess I should cover the financial aspect of where the arena is. Very, very, very financially sound. One of the major things that when Mr. Burbank set it up 20 plus years ago was the fact that he didn't want it to be a quote-unquote white elephant to the community when times were tough, maintenance would not be done, etc. Presently, we have $330,000 in the revolving account to be able to handle anything that has come up. The board approved last month, waiting for the final quotes, but it'd be roughly $120,000 for an electric, going from gas to electric. Zamboni. Which the arena can be able to handle through its cash flow. It's certainly going to improve the air quality, not that the air quality was bad, but obviously, anytime you can get carbon dioxide out of their place is important. That is something that we're going to be able to do through the normal business operations there. This year, all of the needs of the community were met. The only adjustment we had to make was, as you're well aware, the high school team won the state championship, so they went to the middle of March instead of the beginning of March. So Reading Youth Hockey had to get moved around a little bit, but everyone was able to be accommodated. Some of the exciting things, I think there's an opportunity down at Burbank Arena, and I know Mr. Feudo and Jenna have been involved, is it's really come about from the early education study, where kind of figuring out who owns what and what the opportunities are. There's some different things that are looking at from the baseball field. There's a lot of land in the back that maybe, everyone has dreams of what it can possibly be. Maybe something that could be a turf field that maybe helps subsidize some of the capacity issues, shall we say, from lacrosse and soccer and Pop Warner and baseball and softball, etc. So I think that's one of the things that is on the horizon, shall we say, to take a look at. One of the interesting things, and I have not seen it, it's just been word of mouth, is from the early educational study of the ability to maybe build something down there. And I know this may get people excited. Nothing's on the thing. It's just, we never knew there was that much land, shall we say, to be able to do something like that. Certainly, that has nothing to do with the Burbank Arena whatsoever. We have our little rectangle that we control for the next 10 or 15 years, shall we say, whatever the agreement is. But I think there's an opportunity down in that area to, because it's one of the few areas that does have land. So that's really, it'll be an interesting 12 months, shall we say, with that area, because there's a lot of people that are interested in doing stuff. As you're probably well aware of, there are different little sports complex, shall we say, popping up, trying to keep kids busy year round. And this may be a good location for that because it's kind of tucked away. The Burbank Arena has a tremendous relationship with the neighbors. Ed Peduto, who's been there since inception, is phenomenal in terms of making sure that if there's a trash or anything after a hockey game, he's out there the next day picking it up. Very proactive working with the community, and I think that's the reason why it's so successful. I know one of the things, and maybe Bob can chime in, is there was talk of Verizon maybe putting an antenna on top of there. We haven't seen anything formally, but that's been some of the talk going on down there. Yeah. So with that, that's all I got, unless you guys have questions. The Bruins are winning 2-0, if you care.
There you go. Important information inbound.
Red Sox are losing 4-2.
It's okay, it's early.
It's early.
That's so. But I guess one of the things, just from a very macro standpoint, if there's ever opportunities, and I'm just speaking for myself, where you can do a public-private partnership like the Burbank model, I would certainly encourage you to use that as a template, because it really works well, where it understands what the town's wishes are. And someone like Ed Petuto has done such a phenomenal job, where he was, we got to try keeping him from other places trying to steal him, so that was one of the things we had to beat back a little bit. So but get good people, like anything, like John and Jenna, you let them do their job. That's the key.
Yeah.
So with that, geez, that was so easy. Mr. Arena usually has the questions. That's why. That's why you guys are ahead of schedule. John's not
That whole
here.
area is probably the most underdeveloped land mass that we have in the town.
And some of it is our land, much of it is not. But
Much of it is privately owned?
No, actually,
available.
much of it. Some of it, but not
Some
much
of it.
Yeah.
And then some of it is wetlands. Some of
But
it.
the wetlands actually spread out pretty far
Yeah.
beyond, what's being used today. There's definitely utilization opportunities there
absolutely.
that, you know, need to be explored. Both from the standpoint of, you know, to John's point, the need recreationally. But additionally, we continue to talk about revenue opportunities that are either missed or absent. And there's enormous revenue opportunity in the kinds of things. I mean, we can witness what's happened with the Ice Arena Authority. I mean, that outlook of, of partnership, endorsed partnership, is something I think we really need to be thinking about.
One thing, in terms of issues for the neighbors, by and large, we don't have any issues down there. Maybe it's because the gun club's right next door and they don't know, where it's coming. But, it's really a quiet area where, you're not dealing with a lot of issues with kids, hanging out there doing what kids will do sometimes at night. And, so I think it is a great opportunity for the board to consider.
Yeah. There's a lot for us to look at there, I think.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions that come up, please don't hesitate to give me a call.
Great.
And Carl, I'll be happy to take you on a tour of the facilities
Yeah,
anytime.
loved it. Yeah.
Ice arena,
It's
forest,
nice.
shooting range.
We heard a little bit about the shooting range.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. So, well,
Thanks,
thank you
Carl.
again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, thank you.
Have a good night, thank you.
So it looks like the next item on our agenda is the town meeting preview.
Okay. If you brought your warrants,
I forgot mine on the
historically
table.
and traditionally, I have one here if you need an extra.
Yep.
The selectmen haven't always voted every warrant article. Last November, we did it before town meeting, so your votes could go in print. For this town meeting, because of the election, that was just logistically impossible, but it seemed like a good idea to give you the opportunity to vote on articles, before the town meeting. If you see the handout from tonight, the first page, draft motions.
Yep.
We've included every article in here that you could vote on, and I've sort of italicized ones that traditionally the board has not voted on, but it's certainly, if you have every right to vote on any article you wish. Let me just step through the articles one at a time. I'm not going to find it online, so.
The big one? The special town meeting, which one are you starting with?
Yeah, start with the big, thick one.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it from memory, so.
All right, this will be a test.
I know. And just to give you a little bit of an overview before we go there, because I forgot, we had a meeting last Thursday, a pre-town meeting. And the way the night is gonna progress, it's at least a two-night town meeting and hopefully just a two-night town meeting. First night, we'll start with Article 2 reports, and we'll actually start out with the town moderator giving an update on the charter committee. Mr. Brown may hop out of his seat and say something also. And then both CPDC and the Zoning Advisory Committee chairs will give a presentation on a zoning update. It sounds very exciting and very interactive. A little bit unusual, but because of the
Page
special
17,
town meeting, next we're gonna have the FinCom chair. They'll give a financial update under reports.
Choreography.
And then lastly, John Arena is gonna give the state of the town as the fourth report.
Okay, great.
All of that will take a minimum of an hour.
Yeah.
Probably an hour. So
probably.
that gets us right into the 8:30 into the special town meeting logistically. And then we'll
Yep.
hop back and go through Articles 4 through the end.
Okay.
We discussed with the moderator the need to have certain order, so there's certain articles that must precede others. So if we went extra fast, there's certain things we have to do, and he'll handle all that. That's just sort of the overview. So if you want to look at the thick packet, the annual town meeting, Article 4 is a simple amendment to the capital plan.
Right.
Now, I will say that because special town meeting is happening, why don't we just do special town meeting first? It's probably easier to get it out of the way.
Probably easier, right?
Special town meeting essentially has two articles. Article 3, the $485,000 schematic design for the early education center into the capital plan. Again, this article does not fund anything, it just puts it in the plan right now, that is not in the plan. Then, in that article, I'll make a few remarks to town meeting as to why we're doing it with this, in this fashion, and that's to allow for debt. Article 4, Dr. Doherty will make a presentation, he said will be probably similar to what you saw this morning, about an hour.
It was about an
About
hour and a half.
Yeah, he figured he needed an hour for this town meeting.
If he's gonna do the whole thing, it's an hour and a half.
Okay.
Because I've been twice.
So if it's an hour and a half, we're certainly unlikely to get past the special town meeting for that night, which is fine. And then we'll have who knows how much discussion.
Bob, it's curious that the Board of Selectmen is sponsoring that. It's the first time I noticed that. Why isn't the school committee sponsoring that article?
You were just you had to remember, you had to close the warrant a couple weeks ago on a Wednesday night,
And it happened to.
and you're sponsoring the debt article. That's typical.
I'm sure that's how we've handled it in the past, but,
Yeah, it is.
all right.
It could be different ways. Other committees can request you to do it. But in this case, where it was a special town meeting, you clearly had to call the town meeting. It was just
Right.
easier to do it this way. I don't know if there's anything else you want to discuss, if there's anything you want to vote on in the special town meeting, but there are.
The building committee that's being put together, how is that
You
being
know-
handled? Is that being handled by town meeting?
Dan, the last I heard was the school committee voted to form a school building committee. I don't recall the exact membership of it. There was a mix across different functions. But that was very different and distinct from the instructional meeting given at special town meeting to do it through the town meeting body
Is
itself.
that analogous to how the one that Russ Graham headed up was formed? It was formed by vote of the school committee?
Yes, I guess so. The composition I won't say, I don't know.
Composition,
But
it-
the
who
format's the
did it,
same.
yeah.
And very similar, if you will, to the library building committee that this board formed a couple of years ago. But this is, again, it's a specific school project building committee, if you will, as opposed to a standing building committee that might deal with any number of projects. And the thinking, certainly in the school department, was time is of the essence. The bylaw committee was charged in doing the other, and they were asked to report back to November town meeting, so that they just couldn't wait. So if the board has any thoughts to vote on these two articles, let me find them. They're on page 2 of tonight's handout in the middle.
Can offer-
Articles 3 and 4.
Or so inclined. It's about 2/3 of the way down, page
Yeah,
2.
Article 3 of the special town meeting.
Do you want to take that first,
Well,
Madam Chair?
what I want to say is, do we want to vote on this? I know you said you were surprised to see that we were,
Well, given that our name's on it, I guess we should.
the names are on it. I mean,
They're gonna be looking to us, our name's on
now the board, does the school committee ever put anything on the
Yeah.
warrant?
it. They sure do.
Because it does seem like this should have come
Well,
from the
Article
school committee.
3 is part of the charter, so that's
Oh,
something
so
the
that would
selectmen
come
have
from
to
the
do. That's the
selectmen.
capital
That I
Sure, and
understand,
I'm fine with that,
But the
but
debt article-
authorizing the debt is,
Yeah, the debt article could have come from them. I think logistically, the way it all happened so fast, I'm not sure they had time to meet and decide that and do that. If you remember how rushed we were to schedule this and get it
Always
to
rushed.
print and all that.
I know, it's always rushed, that way it,
Yeah.
we have to go on, it's,
Well,
We got a
that seems to
deadline.
be how things get done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not always well. The second time, maybe. Shall I offer these two motions?
So are we in the, we're in the special town meeting
Yeah,
right now?
you're on
Yes.
page
Yeah.
2, 2/3 of the way down the page, Article 3 of the
First
2014.
item is for the capital amending the capital improvement, Article 3. Move that the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 3 of the 2014 special town meeting.
And so I'm clear, that was what we actually have, that's what we proposed in our last meeting, in the joint meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was to move the,
This is to amend the capital improvement plan of FY 2014, FY 2023 to include the 485K.
This 485,000 would otherwise have been part of annual town meeting. but you need to do it here in order to do the next article.
That does
Got
not
it.
appropriate the funds, but it creates a niche
creates
for it
niche for it,
in the
so-
capital plan.
Okay.
And without that vote,
Yes.
Article 4 cannot be taken.
And we would need a second, right, on that?
Yes.
So
Yes.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so John, second. So is there discussion, further discussion on that? Do folks comfortable voting? All right, all those in favor? 4-0.
Move that the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 4 of the 2014 special town meeting. This is the authorization of additional debt for the school early childhood center project in the amount of $485,000.
Mhm.
That's to be done under the cap for now, but with the intent of rolling it into a future
The
debt
advantage of
exclusion.
debt is you could exclude it from the tax rate in the future if you choose.
So is there a second on that?
Second.
Kevin? All right. I have to say that I have a much harder time voting to approve this. And the reason that I say that is because I don't feel like there's been, I feel like there's been a lot of discussion from a very focused early education standpoint, but I don't believe that there's been a good case made for why this is the best use of Reading's funds to support the community of Reading. And I haven't heard anything that talks about that. I've heard about early childhood education, which I do believe is important. I also believe that the town of Reading already invests in their children's early childhood education. So we're talking about really shifting. We're talking about doing an expansion in the scope of what we provide. And we're talking about shifting that expansion over to the taxpayers. And so I'm concerned about us jumping on, and I know this has to happen before anything else happens. My concern is once you start to spend money, people think it's already a done deal and now it has to be done. I'm just concerned about that.
Well, if we don't approve this,
It's still up to town meeting to
Yeah.
vote
It's just a
anyway. This is
recommendation by the board.
strictly
This is-
a
yeah.
recommendation from the Board of
It doesn't
Selectmen.
affect the
and
But,
so,
yes.
let me just be sure I understand, what
Mhm.
is the end game of Article 4?
To appropriate funds to allow that 15% design study to go forward.
To find out the answers to the proposal.
Well, I understand
Essentially,
that.
not to what Marcy's talking about. Marcy's, I think, talking about something completely different. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think it's more to find out. This one specifically is to say, go out and look at this proposal and fully vet it, or at least as fully as we can for a 485.
Well, it's saying we've already decided on the spot and this is where we're
Right.
doing the study for.
Right.
Those funds
So-
will not be expended to study any other option.
Right.
Correct.
And so I also have my own concerns about it being built right there by the high school, taking up all of the parking that's related to the Performing Arts Center. And don't feel like there was any, there's no wider community discussion about this. It has been strictly school committee, school community discussion that's taken place on it. And that's not everybody in the town. That isn't everybody in the town.
Analysis.
There's an additional element in that the Oakland Road property, I think, has been
Mhm.
looked at as an economic asset by the town. And it sounds like it's gonna be part of a paved-over area now that will be retained in town ownership rather than potentially
Is that
sold
true
out
of the
for
whole,
rent.
that's not true of the whole
That's-
thing, is it?
Well, I've asked them in their design work to consider the whole parcel as economically valuable and to disrupt it as little as possible if they only need a portion of it.
Okay.
So part of this 485,000 is to do borings and more of a study of the
Correct.
topography over there.
And it makes me wonder if, those borings bear out the fact that maybe in fact you can put a 70,000 square foot
Right.
building there. And alleviate, a lot of issues that I think are real. I think the topic that you bring up of that being in front of we've got what I would argue to say is a world-class performing arts center that is actively being used. And, we seem to have had, a funnel that took us right to one place. And what you're suggesting is that if, and I hear it, Marcy, if we vote endorsing this, we're saying,
We're in favor of the proposal, right? That's what I'm
That's
afraid, that's what I'm afraid of the optics on. And I don't feel like I've had an opportunity to get the full facts or to weigh in from a town perspective.
Well, that topic came up at today's meeting, actually.
Did it?
You know, by, you know, there was a person that was there who, you know, indicated some understanding of construction and questioned pretty strongly, why it was that there wasn't, you know, more look put into, you know, into that space over there. And none has really, other than from a topical standpoint. It's not, there's been no, you know, nobody really knows. They suspect there's ledge. And if that's, I don't see how that stops, you know, construction. It seems like the space is big enough. I don't know. I mean,
Was that on their list of locations that they considered?
Yeah.
Kevin,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, you were on the committee.
I was on the
Yes.
committee, yes. So we did look at that space. The building configuration now, that's just a very crude, we might as well look at that building as being written on a napkin.
Right.
You know, a lot of folks have been taking that building as this is what it's gonna look like. It's really not, it's just kind of, okay, this is what will somewhat get us what we're looking for. That configuration of the building, they tried it on 2 different ways to position on that lot. So the lot, when we as a working group looked at it, had a couple of problems. The one was that it kind of goes down and the back kind of gets skinnier as it gets to the back to a point. So it's not as easy as, yes, the land technically is there, but the way the land's configured, you gotta get pretty creative with how you want to
You're
position
talking about
it.
the leg that goes down the Church of the Nazarene, that, there's like a right angle turn in there. I think
Yeah.
it goes down almost to the main.
Right, yeah, yeah, as it gets down there, it gets skinnier. And so the best spot for it really is gonna be as far towards the street as you could get it. A couple different ways that they put it in there. One was gonna have a substantial retaining wall. I think it was 30 feet, but don't quote me on that. I don't have it in front of me. That backs up to a cul-de-sac. So the thought was putting a 30-foot retaining wall on someone's property line.
Chestnut Street, I think.
Maybe wasn't gonna be the best use. It also didn't come close to parking that we require. And the parking that was there was going to be a hilly lot, albeit it's a lot, but it really wasn't gonna meet any of the parking requirements.
That's kind of interesting because we're taking up lots of parking space
Turning
with
it
that
into a
new
parking
building,
lot.
so I don't understand where we're getting that parking with the new version either, but okay.
Well, we're getting actually, it's, I think, I'm pretty sure it's a net gain. The parking that's
Parking
proposed.
that's proposed, a significant amount of it comes from different parts of the high school site.
It's about 4 or 5.
Which, so.
well, you know,
Actually,
it's
didn't
interesting
wanna bring it
because
up.
part of that parking,
I didn't wanna bring it up to John tonight.
because he's got,
But he's got a
there's
basketball
Birch,
court
there's a
on part
Birch
of that
Meadow
parking
plan
lot, yeah.
that has, you know, the current plan encroaching on that field.
That's right.
That new
Ultimately,
proposed
they
basketball
end
court.
up using the
Just on that
imagination
volleyball
station
area.
spot at least. We told them you can't use that.
Well, what I saw today,
Okay.
what I saw today was a
Closer
parking
to
lot that essentially truncated the use of that baseball field.
Really?
Didn't,
No. That was the, that's existing.
so what,
What
the
they took,
expansion
what
of
they,
the,
was on the other side.
Yeah, they're going the other direction up the hill.
So they're
towards
taking, you
York.
know that, where John's proposed.
John's saying,
Yeah.
I was looking at the plans today.
I was there today, looking at the plans. Okay.
So.
The plans that were up on the
And
wall
you do know the
today
plans change when they're
impacted,
presented.
I mean,
Like, we know
what they
that
did
we-
is they ran a parking lot up to the foul line of the Little League field behind the tennis courts.
Yeah, again, I would caution to say that those plans
So I think,
aren't set in stone as far as
so I
this
think
is where the
we've gotten
borderlines
far
of this
afield
and
from
that.
what we're actually discussing, which is, for this one, it is, we've now made the motion and seconded the motion in terms of what the Board of Selectmen want to recommend on Article 4.
Right.
So if there's any more discussion that's related to that specific issue,
And,
oh, Bob?
please,
To comment that procedurally, if I were in town meeting, if Article 3 succeeds and Article 4 fails, we'll go back into annual town meeting. The 485 will be in the capital plan. And by the way, if Article 3 fails here, it'll come back in an annual and be asked all over again. And
Yes.
then be voted as capital, as cash. So there's gonna be 2 cracks at this,
So-
if people wish. So
What-
this is a debt attempt to finance it with debt. But there's nothing to prevent anyone, if this fails, under the annual town meeting, because that's the way it was originally proposed, is to also propose, just
But
using
that is-
free
So-
cash.
So, in other words, it sounds like, what we may need to do is to actually, maybe we want to vote one way, but actually give people our report on this.
Well, I think it's very difficult for us to vote against this, given the fact that we created the opportunity for us to make this not come out of cash.
Yeah.
Because we're very concerned
Right.
about the cash.
Right.
That was the whole point of the special town meeting and Articles 3 and 4. So for us, I mean, we can have our, individually or collectively, we can have our issues about, you know, the progress of the project, but when we talk about the funding, I think we'd be remiss if we
didn't vote in
if we
favor
didn't
of the
vote
funding.
these, if we didn't endorse these by vote. That's, you know, not because I necessarily think
Yeah.
that we're going exactly down the right path, but when we think about the financing, clearly I think this is the right way to do it. I mean,
To that point, John, under Article, would it be 6, that's the FY14?
Right.
Under the annual, currently as drafted, it has the 485 in there, but there's a note saying this won't be moved as a motion.
If this passes.
But the question to the board is, given our discussion just now, would you want to see it coming out of free cash if it fails, or? I would,
No.
I would say this,
that's why
if the board supports anything, it's this.
I think that's why we have to support it, even though philosophically
Yeah.
I'm challenged about
And
where we are with the project at the moment, but.
I'm gonna be upfront and say I'm gonna have to abstain on this, being in a butter and having grave concerns about the whole situation. But, and for many reasons, about 5 reasons, which I won't get into tonight. So, I think Article 6, the recommendation might be to approve that if your position is held not to use free cash, to take that out. We don't approve the motion with free cash being spent for the 485.
For Article 6 tonight, you can vote an amended Article 6.
That's what I'm saying.
Removing the
When we get to
485, which is the, you know, if this passes at town meeting, that would be the motion on the floor for Article 6 for town meeting.
Would be what we've
Without the
amended.
485.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that would be my inclination, then, would
Okay.
be to vote against this and to amend Article 6 to take out that out of free cash. Because I personally believe we should have a more complete community-wide discussion on this particular issue. And once it's built, we have what we have.
Right.
We've
I
assumed those
agree with that,
additional
Marcy.
operating costs,
It's a
and
sound-
we've
sound way to go.
damaged the resources we have, and we are at the place we're at, once it's built. So I don't think it's a good idea to rush necessarily.
But in regards to Article 4 of the special town meeting, I think what I heard you just say is that you're okay with that one, but you're not okay with the one.
No, what I'm saying is, my inclination would be to amend Article 6 to take out the free cash. So that now you have Article 6, which doesn't have that free cash in
If
it,
it's moved
and
with the
has
free
this.
cash. Yeah.
Right.
And you vote against this, and you
Yeah.
vote in favor of
Right.
6, which is now not having that money coming out of
Yeah.
free cash. I guess the problem is,
You're
then you can
opposed
have
to
somebody
So
from.
you're opposed to spending for
I'm
any, for the
opposed
project?
to spending the money right now
Okay.
until that full, but then if we have somebody put it back in from town meeting floor, then we probably wind up spending it out of free cash, and then we're stuck with it.
Well,
right?
that is the worry. I
So-
mean, because I would say that I would be shocked, frankly, to not hear from someone
Yeah.
in town meeting. You know, were we to follow the trail that you just laid out for us,
Right. Somebody will
which I
toss it
frankly
back
agree
in
with.
there and-
I can't imagine for a second
Mm-hmm.
that we wouldn't have a free cash, you know, amendment put out there.
Yeah.
And furthermore, I would be a little surprised that it didn't pass. I mean, and I don't wanna forecast what town meeting is gonna do, but I also wanna protect our free cash. And so that's where I'm coming from on this, you know, not philosophically thinking it's a great idea, but,
As things stand right now, the FinCom has voted what on Article 6? To support what? Which option?
They voted to support using free cash,
They did.
but then, after the fact, They
Yes.
had the special town meeting and they voted to support that, but they didn't unvote the other, because they had already met.
I see.
Correct.
So
So
they
So
would
they're
actually.
supporting both of them.
So
They
they're
would-
supporting
both of
paying
them.
So
for
they are,
twice.
as it stands, they're gonna move that 45 in the motion.
No, I would assume that they will actually amend that vote Monday night to change their mind. They didn't move to reconsider the
Unless
article,
4 doesn't pass.
And
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
I don't know, that's.
So
the
it's
question
already
you
in,
have to ask.
they already have,
It's already
they have
in
one
there,
in
they'll
concrete
line it up,
already.
yeah.
You'd have to take it out. That's a majority vote on that one. It's a 2/3 on 4.
Is there a vote in favor under duress? Yes.
Cross your fingers, I suppose.
I just want to remind the board, one important part of this, I don't necessarily disagree with anything you're saying, but one important part of this is to make sure we support whatever effort we're going forward with enough funding.
Right.
So as not to give the library too few dollars to do a poor job estimating up front.
Right,
And that's
right.
one of the reasons
Right.
to do this.
Yeah.
But it's up to everyone's comfort level, is this.
However, this
the
funding only supports
one
the
option.
already
Yeah.
chosen option at the one spot.
With the building on that.
Well,
With the
and-
building on
and to be
that
fair,
spot, so-
past options have supported the broader studies. So
Hmm.
the school has already spent, I'm remembering,
Right.
$150,000
Something like that.
to do that broader work. And this is the solution the school committee's voted. So,
I don't know if we have a second on that or not.
Yeah, Kevin had
Yeah, we
had
did,
seconded that.
Talked about.
Additional discussion?
Well, I would just say that I'm gonna be in support of Article 4 to spend it to do the feasibility study. Just because from working on the group, I know there really aren't any other options that have a price tag where this one is. And I think that's the component that sometimes get lost. There are a lot of other options. There are tons. There really are. It's what do we want to spend to get those options? This one is by no means perfect. And I think this feasibility study is going to either say, you know, this thing looks great or this thing doesn't look great. And I think it's important for us to put that in front of the folks that are going to be voting for it. And I can definitely tell you, bang for our buck wise, this is one of the better options we have on the table. So there are a lot of other ones.
I'm not convinced that bang for the buck for the entire town of Reading, overall, best place to spend our dollars, that this is it, is my concern. That's where my concern comes in. You're coming from the, we definitely do it no matter what, we're definitely doing it. I am concerned we didn't have the broader discussion, so.
From a programmatic standpoint, is that what
From
you're-
a town of Reading standpoint, so I'm a selectman, I'm concerned with the town of Reading. The town of Reading will lose access to their community arts center. They will now be expanding the scope of what they're paying for from a taxpayer standpoint, and it benefits a small group of people. And we haven't had the discussion about the fact that we're increasing our operating budget by a substantial jump up, because now you have a brand new building, it has to be maintained, it has to be staffed. We have a huge
Well, and there are
increase in
other issues
operating.
tied to that, Marcy. I mean,
So-
so for example, one of the things that will happen, and there, you know, there was an indication earlier today in the meeting when I asked this question, that there might be a mitigating possibility, but there are a couple of things that are true from an operational standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
One is that about, in excess of $600,000 will stop coming in the way of tuitions. And that will happen at a time when everything's opened up to full-day kindergarten as a proviso. The other thing that will happen for sure is that there'll be a lag time from the state funds, you know, to be determined. When I asked this question earlier, there seemed to be some thought that there would be a way to mitigate, you know, some of those operational losses. But there are still things that are true. One is that something will have to happen in that intervening time that is real money that's gonna have to be dealt with.
Right.
Right.
The second thing is that there are operational costs yet to be determined, which are not clarified yet.
Right.
So, yeah, all of that's there. And it's not as though there's revenue sources that we can identify. I mean, we've just seen that in the rather interesting debate over budget
Right.
over the course of the last 6 weeks.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
it's not as simple as it sounds.
Right, it's
And
very
it's not that it's a
easy to
bad
be in
idea, but it's not
favor
as
of
simple as it
early
sounds.
childhood education.
Who is it?
Who's could be against that? Nobody can be against that. It's really looking at that bigger context of the entire town and what benefits the town of Reading. That's the bigger question. So,
Financially, the expectation and public discussion has always been, John's right, the tuition stops in a given year.
mhm.
So in 1 year, you have no incoming tuition.
Yeah.
And you offer full-day kindergarten for free. And there's no state aid. So that year, you're taking it on the chin fully.
Right.
And the ballpark figure I recall, and this may be a couple of years old, was $1.2 million. And then in the next year, state aid more or less takes care of whatever the operating costs are, and that was never proven or tied out to the nickel. It was just made as a general statement.
Is that retroactive to the period?
So you have 1 year on your own for sure, where you don't have the 600,000 and/or you don't have the $1.2 million. Now,
Superintendent Doherty indicated to me, when I asked this question today, that possibly they would be able to run a year inside the current environment if they knew it was just a year.
Right.
So, that, I think, based on what I heard him say today, that
I
could.
don't, yeah, you told me that, and
Revolving funds or something?
I mean, the other piece of this was the all-day kindergarten account as of 2 years ago had a $800,000 surplus, $800,000. And at that point, the schools said it's highly likely we would offer that up to help with that 1 year bridge. So let's just say it's 600,000.
Mhm.
So the $1.2 million costs 600,000 from the one-time surplus, the actual operating cost is 600,000. But my understanding is, as soon as you offer all-day kindergarten, you can't charge tuition. It has to
That
be
is
free.
correct.
And as soon as you offer it, the state will not pay for 1 more year. No matter how you time it, build it, have it in the old building, build a new
It's
building,
a
that
full
doesn't
year
matter.
regardless.
That's so I don't know what he said today, and I don't know what other possible.
Well, maybe, and I don't wanna put words in
Right.
anybody's mouth.
I don't
I was
know.
trying to, it's a complex topic,
Yeah.
and I was trying to understand the operational mechanics of it.
Sure.
I mean, I'm, frankly, I'm more of an operational guy than I am a,
Yeah, the
a
expectation.
development guy.
As of a couple of years ago when we were over at Coolidge was, this would clearly be a 1 year hit to free cash for operating costs
Sounds like it would happen.
of somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 ballpark.
And then there's likely ongoing hits to
Mm-hmm.
the operating budget, which we don't know what that is.
Well, yeah, we
There's
don't.
some amount, though. It's not gonna fully cover
Right.
all the extra staffing you need for that building, all the extra maintenance, everything else.
I don't know,
Seems unlikely. Maybe it will.
yeah.
But-
You're right, it's a complicated topic. The
It is.
transition is
Complicated.
complicated, and actually, the whole concept is complicated. The one comment I made to the architect, or the designer, I guess, was that if they were gonna effectively use the Oakland Road property and render it useless for any other purpose, then they ought to really do a thorough job evaluating it as the primary site. And if it costs another $1 million or $2 million to develop the site, let us know. That might be a choice the community wants to know about and wants to be aware of.
Yeah, I do think
I
that that's a
think
choice that should
that
be
is a
out
choice
there
that
if
should
that's
be out
possible.
there.
And I just don't know
So
what
I
this.
don't know that that's not
And
an
I
option.
think, like,
this
if you've
study.
got a triangular shaped lot, do you need a square building? Maybe not. Maybe you can do something different, like,
I think that was just,
So-
again, the paper napkin that Kevin mentioned. It
Right,
was
but
just-
I'm saying that, like, but you
Totally
can, you could do a paper napkin picture that's a little different too, so.
Because I was impressed when it was dropped down in Washington Park, where poor John thinks he's gonna build a basketball court this spring.
I did a Mamma Mia when I saw that.
He did something else.
All right, further discussion?
So, let me just let's come back to the practicality of Article
Right.
4. So, from my perspective, from a practical standpoint, it seems that I would vote in favor of this Probably because I find it to be a superior funding mechanism over the other one. Not because I necessarily think
Not
it's
because you
a,
necessarily agree that the money should be spent.
But that will go in the report, right?
So that's kind of where I'm at on this thing. I mean, I do think, the idea of going to free cash for this is not something that I'm interested in.
I agree.
And I think this is the outlet that potentially mitigates that. Yep.
I have a strange thought. Usually, the capital article is ceremonial, we'll say. But if the board really wants to make a statement, you could move to reconsider Article 3, and some of you could oppose it. Because you don't like the idea, you don't think it's got whatever background and support it should have. But then you could support Article 4 and say, if it does go through, and if the rest of you think it's okay, this is the best way to do it. So that's a little backwards, but that might get the message, I think, that you're trying to get out there, which is,
So,
I don't really think spending money at this time is the right idea, Article 3. But if it is, this is the way to do it.
oh, I see what you're saying. Just as our position on each, not
Because you've added it to the capital plan, which endorses it as a reasonable thing that we should
All
consider.
right, well, that's something to think about.
So then we would need a motion to reconsider Article 3 if we wanted to do that.
And that could come from anyone, because we were all on the prevailing side. Anybody want to do it?
I thought it had to be one of the people that made the motion.
No, it had to be on the prevailing
It had to
side
be
of
on
the
the
vote,
prevailing side.
whichever it is.
So I guess procedurally, do we need to finish our vote on Article 4 before we
Table.
go back to?
No, you could,
No, we could
Later,
table
we
it.
could-
Kevin, questions? Because for a second, you looked like you weren't sure which direction we were going in. Any?
No,
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay, so, is there a motion to reconsider Article 3?
well, I'm gonna move to lay the consideration of Article 4 on the table. I think that's the proper way to do
Okay.
it.
Is there a second?
Second. All in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
That's 4-0.
Move to reconsider the vote under the position the Board of Selectmen took under Article 3 for the special town meeting. And I think, are we under
Second.
Roberts or under town meeting rules? It's either majority or 2/3.
It's 2/3.
2/3 to be safe.
2/3 of 5.
Yeah, Roberts says half, but town meeting rules are 2/3.
Is there a second on that?
That's it. I moved it, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
you did.
Everybody's seconding.
We might not have a second on it.
So I guess we're
I'm
not
sorry, I got a little distracted.
Okay.
Could you do it again?
I just made a motion to reconsider our vote under Article 3, with Bob's thought in mind that if the board would wish to change their position on 3, sort of give a short report on why we said that we don't think this is the
So
right thing.
what you're asking for is a second on a reconsideration?
Yes, this-
I
that
second-
vacates the
I second
vote.
that motion.
Yeah.
And now the vote on the,
And just bear in mind, if you were town meeting, this would make no sense.
no,
But as a statement, I think this is maybe a
Right.
better way to make it.
It's a better way to
Because
make
you
the
can't very
statement.
well approve Article 4 if Article 3 has failed. It just doesn't make logical sense.
and that is, it's a debatable motion. Hopefully there's very little.
So you have to vote to reconsider
Additional,
first.
so now,
It'd be discussion on the motion to reconsider. and
so,
then the
okay,
vote.
so
Yeah.
there's a vote to reconsider, all those in favor? Okay, that's 4-0.
Okay, so we've vacated our,
So now we can rediscuss this.
all right, so I will remake the motion on Article, well, I have to remake the motion. Move the Board of Selectmen to recommend the subject matter of Article 3 of the 2014 special town meeting. That would need a second.
We need a second.
So we need a second in order to be able
To
to
be able,
discuss it.
we
then
always
you-
need a second on any motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
And then
Okay.
you can vote the same, different,
So,
whatever you want.
so now it's really, do you want to go ahead and vote in support of this?
3. yeah.
This being the statement that we would make, that actually makes sense to me,
Right.
to do it that way.
Mhm. Doing a great job over there.
So
Just so I don't know, we're
let's
going
review the
to-
minutes on Article.
Parliamentary
Could you
dynamite
review the
tonight.
minutes on Article 3 for us?
Right now, you're voting to approve Article 3, which is to put 485,000 into the capital plan.
This is a vote to put it into the capital plan.
Right, 'cause there's
Which
nothing
has
in the
to happen
capital plan
before
right
you
now.
can vote to spend money.
Yes
Right.
vote puts it in, no vote does not.
So this is the vote to put it for debt.
In the capital
To
plan.
say,
capital
yes,
plan.
we think that this is a good
This
expenditure
doesn't talk about
of
funding it
debt.
in any way,
This is a
shape, or
good
form.
recommendation of a way to spend our money
Right.
under debt.
And really, what we're talking about here is the message of the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
It's not binding on anyone.
Oh, no, it's absolutely not binding on anyone.
And so what we're really asking is this a good way to spend our money? And if the.
Does this benefit the town of Reading as a whole? What do we think, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what we're tasked with, not with how the schools spend their money, but how all of Reading is benefited by spending money.
And so if there was a no vote to this, does that,
From us?
From
From
us, all
us,
it's gonna
yeah.
be is a report to town meeting
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah,
either
one
way.
of you will stand up, let's see who's doing it.
I'm thinking I probably need to do it if I'm not down there.
No, didn't have anything written down yet, so.
So. What? All right, so are folks comfortable voting now? All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? That'll be 0-4. All right,
Move to take the recommendation for Article 4 from the table.
second?
all those in favor? Now,
Further discussion or vote?
further discussion? Any further discussion? I think we've discussed
I think
this
we've
to
discussed
death.
it.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, this motion will mean that we are recommending that if it's being funded by debt.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
All those in favor? That would be 3,
3,
0,
0, 1.
1. Dan is
Abstain.
abstaining.
So that's probably why a special town meeting may take an hour or two.
Or 3 nights.
Yeah, we might be
No,
going
3
beyond.
minutes.
Okay,
Well, now we got the whole other.
all right, yep.
All right, now let's jump back to Article 4. I don't have it in front of me, but you do everything in Article 4, other than presumably the 485 may already be put in the capital plan, or if it wasn't, I don't think anyone's gonna try a second time, but you never know.
So 4 is really,
It's all the
Annual
different capital items. And it goes out through for, if you will, for 9 years.
and so in the general fund, the 485 would be removed by amendment?
It's either there from a previous special town meeting,
Right.
or anyone could do anything and add it here if it weren't, or
If it wasn't.
it won't be double counted. put it
Yes.
that way.
No, it's not gonna happen twice.
No.
Motion? Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 4 as amended of the 2014 annual town meeting.
Second.
Kevin, second. Additional discussion? All those in favor? It's 4-0.
The next article is a resident petition. You certainly may vote on it, it's not your article, but you, again, there's not a lot of precedent here. I don't remember a resident article, certainly in my time. If the resident had asked the town manager, we would have just put it in the next article, but that's fine, certainly his right. I certainly would support the article personally. Wouldn't say that very often.
What is this article doing, sorry?
This is taking money out of free cash for the grave markers of veterans from two cemeteries. I believe Mr. Brown will give the presentation.
I believe that would probably be the case.
So if the board wishes to vote, you can, you don't, certainly no
Is
need
it-
to.
Is this something that we've ever tried to get grant funds for? I know we're getting some grant funds for some things.
Yeah, we're doing it for other things.
My inclination personally would be to abstain from doing a vote on
Yep.
this, but,
Okay. It's fine.
There's really been no presentation before the board
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
It's
it's,
tough to
in,
move.
in support of this by Bill.
so, the fact that
I
it's
think I
just
would
been
want to
put
heard
on
that,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I would wanna have heard the presentation and sort of
We
what
haven't heard that? Why
alternatives
have I
we've
heard
had.
that? Where have I heard that?
Maybe talking to Bill.
Maybe talking to Bill.
Maybe, yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
talking.
Or it's in the warrant or warrant
Yeah,
report.
no disrespect intended, but I agree with
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
fine. Again, the next article is a FinCom article, but this is actually the funding of different budget items in and out of FY14.
I will move that the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 6 as amended at the 2014 annual town meeting with the proviso that the $485,000 for school schematic design not be included.
Is there a second?
Second.
John, second that? Additional discussion, all those in favor? You're abstaining from this one?
Yeah.
That's
anything
3,
Okay.
Pertaining to the
3-0-1.
specific
0,
funding.
1.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, tell me what Article 7 is. Is that
40
the,
are smart growth
smart growth?
districts
So
from
there's-
free cash into the stabilization
Right now, there's
fund.
150,000 in free cash certified, and then there's 150,000 that has come in this year as revenues
Mhm.
from,
Article
both from
7,
40R funding.
Okay.
That, this would move that 300 into the stabilization fund, which
stabilization
there's no
fund.
immediate spending plans for it. So for instance, if one wanted to think about economic development, one source of funds. In the past, we've largely done paving projects, capital improvements.
Is there a motion?
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 7 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? That's 4-0.
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 8 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
This is to take a prescribed amount of funds and put it into the OPEB trust.
Yep.
In past couple of years, we've added more than the prescribed amount
Mhm.
because we've had surplus, but in the prior article, we just needed to use that for snow and ice.
Mhm. All right, so is there a motion?
I just read
It
it.
was.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
no second.
All those in favor? That's 4-0.
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 9 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
This is a housekeeping issue in order for us to actually accept grant funds, believe it or not.
Oh.
I'm all in favor of grant funds. Second that. All those in favor? That would be 4-0.
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 10 of the 2014 town meeting.
The West Street project doesn't get any simpler. This is to authorize an additional 300,000 of debt. November town meeting authorized $1 million. That's our best estimate until the project's out for bid. We really don't know the number.
We
The
have to
state
fl-
required us to show this good faith in November. We don't need to show any more good faith, but we don't have another town meeting till next November, so this is our
Let's
best
not
guess
have to
with
do
some
a
contingency.
special town meeting
This-
for a
Right.
contingency.
Right.
This
Okay.
is sort of a float until we get the reimbursement, is correct or not?
No, this is our share.
This is our
We
share.
have a local share of this, yep.
Did we have a
Alright.
second on this
Don't
already?
remember.
No.
Second.
Okay, John. All right. Additional discussion? All those in favor?
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 11 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
Second?
You did have a presentation on this.
Yeah.
This is simple to accept an easement.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Yep,
Yeah,
okay.
that's easy.
Additional discussion? All those in favor? Okay. It's 4-0.
Move that the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 12 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
You also had a presentation. This is where someone wants to build close to a sewer easement.
Oh, yeah.
Was this the tiny triangle?
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
All right, is there a second?
Tiny triangles too.
I'll second this. Tiny triangle.
All those in favor? This article, that would be 4-0.
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 13 of the 2014 annual town
So
meeting.
this is simply moving the capital plan 1 year forward and effectively adding year 10
Oh,
to
okay.
the thing you've already done.
It's easy.
Second.
All those in favor? It's 4-0. Paula, slow us down if you're not getting this, okay?
I got it
Okay.
down.
And you got another italic here.
Yeah, and I got another page I need to find.
What's our history on voting on the budget?
Flip to page 9, you can see on tonight's packet, you can see how FinCom voted.
It's interesting because it used to be, when I first started on FinCom used to say, how did the Board of Selectmen vote on
Right.
this? So we have historically voted on this, and
Yeah.
even in advance of FinCom, so.
So,
That's true.
so the selectmen can vote on this, certainly don't have to. They can vote line by line as FinCom did, they can just move the whole package as stated. But let me just give you some of the background for the reason for the FinCom votes that weren't unanimous.
Sure.
The 7-2 vote on public safety, the chair and the vice chair had asked me to supply $100,000 worth of additional spending to add to the $400,000 that the school wanted to make it an even $500,000 extra. So one of the things I added was $80,000 for 2 public safety dispatchers. That was discussed, I know, with you in January. The chair and the vice chair were the dissenting votes. They effectively supported the $80,000, but that's not what the majority of the committee voted. They voted the lower number without the $80,000. On the library wages and expenses, the same general approach happened. I proposed a total of, I think, $5,000 split between wages and expenses to give them overtime. In this case, by a slim majority, FinCom did approve that extra $5,000. So they added $5,000, as you can see, the town manager budget in one column, and then FinCom in the other, you see a little extra funding. It's actually $6,000, I guess, total.
See?
It's
Oh, yeah, 6.
5,700 and 300 or something, like whatever it is. Yeah, it's 6,500, something like that. So in this case, they narrowly approved adding money, so they did not add money to police. The other item I added, none of them supported, for whatever reason.
What was the other item?
Public Works, line painting for Public Works. And they said no. And I should add, the reason that FinCom did not support public safety wages is because I made it very clear that if they did support it, the people would not be hired July 1st. I talked to the chief agreed that we'd wait until the winter and we saw the thing was sustainable. That we weren't about to hire 2 people and lay them off. And someone FinCom said, that's why you didn't get the money, because you didn't want it. And I certainly objected to that characterization. I said I was prudently not spending it. There's a big difference. So, you know, those that wanted the money that night, you needed to spend it, I guess, was the message.
Or the other alternative would be just not to be quite as honest.
That's true.
So
That's,
it would be you
Yep.
need the money, you want the money, you have a need
will
for
go
the
right ahead.
positions, and then
Yep.
the timing is really your town manager
Yep.
management of the budget, right?
and we could have
that-
accepted
and
the money as
overall.
overtime and just used it that way or any other way, but I was being honest and didn't work out. Not that I'm in favor of spending the extra money, I might add. And then I think you know the last one, one member of FinCom did not agree with the additional funds going to the schools after a long debate about whether it should be 400 more or 200
Yep.
more or no more.
And that was 200
So this is
additional that was
200
added.
additional and one member wanted 0 additional, I guess you'd say.
Yep.
So again, I don't know if the board needs to vote on any of these. I thought going over the background would be helpful, and you're certainly welcome to vote on them.
I'll make the motion of, what do you think?
I would make the motion, if you have any exceptions, I'd pick them off first,
Sure.
Yeah.
to save yourself this trouble of going through every line.
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 14 of the 2014 Annual Town Meeting FinCom Article FY15 budget per the handout in the, this evening's packet.
Is there a second?
Page 9.
Second. Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay.
So, so if we vote yes, we're endorsing each of these line items.
Or we could
You could
choose,
selectively
we can
amend the ones you want
selectively
to revert
amend
back.
the ones that we would like to revert back.
And again, this is just a recommendation. The actual motion would also have to be made on the floor of town meeting. This is just what we recommend.
And just to reiterate one comment I made at the financial forum, I'm not in favor of spending more money, but I don't object to the ratio. I don't object to the schools getting 200,000 and the library getting 5,000. That's not an issue.
Yeah.
You object to us spending additional money
Yeah.
that we don't have because
Well-
we're spending it out of our savings, right?
I especially object to spending additional money that is clearly meant to be spent as opposed to meant to be carefully watched.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the motion we've made actually votes that highlighted column, the FY15 budget.
Correct. That's the
FinCom.
FinCom budget that went to town meeting.
So if there are any deviations therefrom, making a motion for the particular line item.
I have a hard time supporting additional 200,000 from the schools when I know that they do have revolving funds. And
Yes.
so that they should actually be looking to their revolving funds before they're getting additional funding from the town's funds, correct?
Well, they certainly do use revolving funds to support their budget every year. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a lot of use.
Well, are there additional revolving funds that weren't discussed at this meeting?
The way I guess I'd characterize it is one of the school committee members asked for some sort of middle ground, that they would try to make up the difference with revolving funds. So if they needed 500 or 480,
Yeah.
if
But I thought there was a
FinCom would-
declaration that that wasn't gonna be adequate, that there would still
Well,
be
there was a
cuts.
declaration that that wouldn't avoid personnel cuts, as opposed to not, don't ask me.
And that not avoiding personnel cuts is a school
That's a choice.
superintendent decision in terms of how he manages his budget.
Right.
So it's not that that means that we're firing people, it means, that that's a choice in terms of how that money gets spent,
Yeah,
right?
I'm no expert on their revolving funds, but it's a similar discussion as free cash.
Well, I could,
Do you want to use it all to support this one
Right.
year's budget and then fall off a cliff? It's the exact same discussion.
Right.
so according to the stats that are on the Massachusetts database, it's about 1.9 million in revolving funds in the schools.
It's also in your booklet
Which
somewhere
seems
at
like
the
a
back
whole
in the blue
lot.
pages.
That's the end of year carry.
That was the end of the year, as the end of last year, which seems like a lot, enough money to support 200,000 in my mind.
Is it a reasonable, I mean, I'm kind of loath to wade into this
Well,
because I'm not a school committee
One thing the
person.
schools have done, and I hope I characterize it exactly the right way, so I'm not the expert, but over the last 5 or 6 years, they've gone from a zero balance to a full year's balance to pre-fund special ed out of district.
Oh, I see.
So $1 million plus
So the buffer.
is money they have saved in special ed over the years, a little bit at a time, in order to then, so when they put a budget in front of you
Yeah.
with a special ed offset, they have that money. There's no question about it. Now, in the past, 3 superintendents ago, there was always a discussion of how many unanticipated students are you putting in there? 2, 4, 6. There was a lot of uncertainty around the issue. So by them saving a couple $100,000 a year times 5 or 6 years, they were able to remove the uncertainty, which is good for budgeting. But it also wasn't $1.2 million that was sent back to free cash. So,
All right.
at the end of the day, it's good financial practice. They now have an accurate number. It's still sort of town money somehow. So that amount of their carryover seems fine. And then the rest, I don't know the details, just like, recreation can only carry, I think it's 20,000 a year over at the end. They don't have those limits on their revolving funds. They can just carry. So all-day kindergarten tuition. Again, there was a balance of 600,000 or 800,000 a couple of years ago. I don't know what it is now. I think it's less. There's nothing that prevented them from carrying in that year to the year and said, you can only carry 50,000 over, you gotta give the rest to free cash. So they do have more flexibility.
I'm looking at here, and there's got a revolving fund activity status, and then there's a revenue offset summary with a bunch of revenue funds. Do you think that's is this the,
Yeah.
this is gonna be the total here, right? And so we're actually talking as of the end of,
So this is how much they used, not necessarily
How much they
in their
used.
budget formally, but
Right.
during the year. Like John Feudo's rec revolving fund isn't technically part of the budget for
Right.
the expenses.
Right. So, but is this the balance then on, am I looking at this right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So the,
And there's blue pages also.
Page are you on,
okay,
Marcy?
so I'm on page 214 on the town warrant,
The lower right corner.
lower right-hand corner. It's page 108 of the school committee budget. And the revolving fund, the projected balance as of June 30th, 2014, it looks like is $2.3 million.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure that these revolving funds, you know, things get used for different things, but that's, you know, in total, that's what the amount is.
Yeah, well,
right?
this is where it
So-
starts to identify so for example, you mentioned the kindergarten tuition.
Mhm.
So there's, 485,000 there.
Yeah.
Community education programs, 597. So do these
But
get
I don't know
used
enough
for-
to tell you about whether it's a good or a bad idea.
Yeah,
how
we
much
don't
they
know,
should
yeah,
use.
we
I
don't know
have no
anything
idea.
about that. All it is it's a pool of money and you don't know
Right.
what, you know.
Yeah, I would, if it's me, I'm keeping hands off of S99.
Of what?
Line S99. That's, I'm not gonna vote on that. Not changing it.
Which is,
The school department budget. On our, page 9, the, FY15 spending scorecard. We can have further discussion on the main motion on that article, or
Or we
amendments can be
can,
offered.
or we can have amendments for specific line items, so.
Right.
I think you should assume you're voting on every line item unless someone speaks up or offers a quick amendment.
Mhm.
what seems to be the only one in question is the school.
Yeah.
200,000, is that correct?
It's the biggest change.
Mhm. It's interesting, I think if John was here, he might have some comments to make on this one.
John and I have had some interesting discussions. I wouldn't want to speak for him. I'll tell you
No,
what.
no, I wouldn't want to
I'll
speak
tell you
for
what
him
I
either.
concluded. Between the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the finance committee, there's 20 people that were elected or appointed.
Mhm.
The finance committee and the school committee by vote, and the selectmen by indication up till now, you haven't voted. 2 want to spend more free cash. 12 are fine with the amount that's FinCom's number. And 6 have verbally or otherwise indicated they're not comfortable spending that much. So what I said to John was, in the spirit of trying to move town meeting along and having this discussion in the summer, as one of the 6, which he clearly is, you could say, I'm okay with this 200,000, I'll join the majority, that's 18 out of 20. We'll live with it for this year, but it's not right. It's not right in the future. Surely we could do anything for $200,000, but it's not the process. There's something wrong with the process. There's something wrong with the conclusion. We're spending above our means. We shouldn't have a finance committee that's urging an
It's
override.
urging overspending and override,
in order
that's
to get it.
spending
So there's a
additional
lot of
money.
sort
I
of
think
background
there's
and
some-
noise that I agree with needs a full discussion.
Mhm.
But the point is, do you really want to cause a fuss on town meeting floor for that or not?
Yeah,
Personally,
probably
I didn't
not.
see the reason.
Right.
Again, I don't object to the schools getting it, per se. I just think the process needs some revisiting this summer, quite
That's
honestly.
well put.
Yeah. I think
Now,
that's
what
a
John thinks
good
and what
point.
he'll say in this town, I don't know. That's just what I propose to him.
But
Yeah.
I just had an inkling it's not gonna be like your father's State of the Town address.
It's a little different.
It's gonna be a little different, I think, yeah.
It's actually quite good.
Anybody else? All right,
Well,
go ahead, John.
just fundamentally, as I understand the expenditure of free cash, I understand it as opportunity, emergency, one-time expenses.
Right.
That's kind of the way I've looked at it in my household forever.
Right.
And, you know, or in my businesses that I own. I mean, there's a certain amount of money that is precautionary, is opportunistic, but it tends to be spent one time as that as the situation demands or the opportunity calls. The thing that concerns me about the decision to spend $200,000 of a shortfall, and when I say a shortfall, not to indicate that somehow anybody on the school committee or in the school administration has misspent or has somehow done something wrong. I understand that they're laying out the programs the way they think they should be executed, and I think they've done that very well, and I really believe over a long haul that's been done very well. So this isn't a question of their judgment, it's a question of where does the money come from.
Right.
And typically, in my mind, an ongoing expense is not something you pull out of, you know,
Savings.
out of savings, or out of an emergency fund, or out of free cash, or whatever it is we want to call that.
Not sustainable.
You know, I do hear what Bob's saying, though, is that there's some fundamental decisions that have to get made. And whether or not we want to get into a brawl on, you know, on this topic in town meeting, you know, I just wonder if discretion isn't the better part of valor in regard to this discussion. I mean, I'm inclined to say, because it's not that I do not want the school to have that money, because that's not the way I feel.
Right.
This is a form over substance issue for me. I don't like the form that this money is flowing over in. I don't know that I'm prepared to vote against it. I just think that sends a wrong message from my personal perspective. I mean, I do think that the schools that need that money, and I don't begrudge them that money, I want to get it to them in a better way. I don't like the way that it's going there, but I'm not going to vote against this budget.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor? It's 4-0.
Couple more here. Excuse me. We're on 15. Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 15 of the 2014 annual town meeting. It's the Affordable Housing Trust.
Right, trust fund setup, yep, same as renewal of previous years.
Okay.
Additional discussion? Oh, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Additional discussion? All those in favor? 4-0.
Move the Board of Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 16 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
Oh, revolving funds, they have to be voted every year.
Yeah.
Correct, and there's only a slight change and a broadening of the use of the health fund to allow, the example is bicycle helmets for anyone in town.
Sure.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Okay. All additional discussion? All those in favor?
Move the Board of
4-0.
Selectmen recommend the subject matter of Article 17 of the 2014 annual town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
This is chapter 90, yeah.
Kevin seconding that?
That's routine every year.
All right, all those in favor? 4-0.
I don't think we want to take a position on removal of town meeting members on our.
No, that's absolutely not something we want.
I think we've completed both warrants.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
Good job, everyone. Good discussion.
Thank you. Whose piece of paper wants to get out of here?
Slippery.
I think, I agree with your comment earlier that we can hold off on the goals till there's a full board. I wanted to make a
I
quick,
wonder if that might be a good thing to fold in with the, potentially with the retreat.
well, and I wanted to, yeah, John and I are working on retreat topics. Just to be clear, it's at Jordan's. We've got the room all secured.
Okay,
It's
great.
The chairman.
8 AM on a Saturday till 1.
Yep.
If you have any topics you'd like to add, please email John and I, just John and I.
Yeah.
And then John will work on an agenda.
It's the 10th at 8 o'clock.
Correct, yes. What we're finding already is there's way too many ideas and not enough time.
Right.
So you don't
Right.
wanna over pollute yourself with too much work.
Right.
We'll
Do
try
you
to
have
focus
a,
on
do you have a draft, set of bullet points?
They're still
Because maybe
working
there,
on that,
maybe,
right?
I
I
mean,
think John sent me one.
I'm just suggesting that if that was circulated,
Okay, I can
then
do
we
that.
would have a better idea,
Cut down
you
on
know,
emails you
if
get
something
from
was
us.
missing that we really wanted to
Sure,
talk
I'd be
about.
happy to do that.
Right.
Somebody's done the thinking already, you know.
Yeah, I will send it.
Yeah, it's easier to edit than it is to come up from the initial, from scratch, right? Absolutely.
And I think the last thing ahead of minutes, and this is the thing that I passed out a single page copy of to you earlier. This is for John for Monday night for his state of the town. These are the questions that Marcy had alluded to. So earlier, Marcy will have an ability to, take a poll of town meeting members, up to 140 or 50 of them, on some simple questions on zoning. And John thought he might like to do the same thing. So I've handed out my suggestions for questions. He circulated among you earlier. And this is something that, I don't know how
You know
much
what, I think
discussion you
he
wanna get
only-
tonight?
he
Just
sent
maybe
it
you
to
and I?
the two
Okay,
of us.
okay.
Yeah, I have
And-
not
I
seen them.
didn't-
And I have some questions that I've put out, that I've
Okay.
put together that are using very much the format of what we used for zoning.
Okay.
For the zoning stuff, so I don't know how they tie into this, but,
Yeah.
I think that this is true, indicate which of the following services you believe are valuable for the community.
And then there's meant to be a list. I
And
just
it's, and
didn't
there's
put
a
that in.
list, and you say to people, you vote for 2, or you vote for 3, like, it's not you vote for everything, right? And then that gives you that ability to see what people think are most important. I almost wonder, truly, on the services, what's most important to you, and what do you believe is most important to the community? Because what you care about is
That's-
not necessarily always the same.
separation.
I mean, if it comes
Okay.
out the same, it comes out the same, but I don't actually think that it necessarily is. I mean, what I care about most is not necessarily what I believe is most important to all of Reading, right? Personally, what impacts me.
Sure.
So there could be value in asking that.
Okay, so the first one is effectively 2 questions.
And then indicate which of these services you or a member of your immediate household is used. I think that's a worthwhile thing to do, but that would be then sort of any of the above, right?
Yes.
So, the services that you've used recently, which ones would be acceptable if you discontinued or severely reduced? I can tell you the answer to that one. Like,
People need to see that.
We did that at the financial forum. Nobody wants to cut any of the services they use. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, but then the follow-on question has to be, in order to maintain those, are you willing to,
Okay, and so that gets into some of the questions that I have here.
And that gets into this chart.
And the chart, so.
Let me just take you through
that
two.
got really confusing.
I know.
We need to simplify that chart, Bob.
That's a great chart for 10:15.
This is a 10 o'clock chart.
That was just the boom.
This axis down here is the rate of increase for 1 year of assessed values. So being in this direction is a good thing. Don't fall
Well, it's a
asleep.
less expensive thing.
Don't fall asleep. Well, I guess that's arguable.
Aggregate assessed values? Yeah.
Yes, 1 year change.
1 year change, okay.
Going up is the change in your real estate taxes, 1 year. So it's only a 1 year snapshot, but what this tells you, this is Reading right here. Our assessed values have done relatively well, and our tax burden has not gone up nearly as much as many communities whose assessed values not going up. So that's just a snapshot.
What, all of these are other communities?
These are
Is
all
that what
communities
this is?
north and west of Boston, except I excluded 2 oceanfront ones because their assessed values are so high.
How could the y-axis creep above 2.5 to 3 absent an override?
Commercial, industrial, this is single-family homes.
Okay.
So it's either that, which some of them are clearly debt exclusions for high schools, the big numbers, but that some of it is shift between commercial and residential.
Because if everybody's assessed value goes up 10%, there's
Right.
no impact on your apportioned taxes.
Right.
It's just a proration situation.
And then that's kind of the snapshot, just to show things haven't been so bad lately. This is the more interesting one that This is where Reading sits among all those same communities in terms of, this is the assessed value, and this is the taxes you paid. Couldn't be any simpler.
Right.
You know, you'd expect a line just like that, and there is a line just like that. We don't, you know, we all hear, and I'm sure you hear as much as I do, taxes are so high in this town.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they're not. We're right in line with many other
Everybody
communities.
else.
And if you move the
Now-
same house in New Jersey, guess what? It's
Well,
triple.
you know, are there some communities that are doing better? Yeah, there are. There's plenty that are doing worse. So when you get to your next logical question, both John and Marcy, is, are you willing to pay more? This is where you look. So if you want to pay more, and it's surprising, if you wanted to do a debt exclusion for a library, you move from about this point here to less than this line. It's tiny.
Yep.
If you're talking about a $6 to $10 million operating override, that's when you start making a jump you even notice.
So where would you jump to in that? Actually, I think
You'd
that's.
probably jump to about here.
Because it's annual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the thinking is, you might not agree, the more money you spend, the more assessed value your house goes up, if you're spending it reasonably. So if you're building a new high school, that's supposed to
Well,
improve your
that
property
certainly
values.
is one of the arguments that comes
Yeah.
out, is that if you're doing A, B, and C, it's
Yeah.
gonna cause your real estate
So if you're
to
not
hold its
throwing the money out the
value go
window,
up.
you know, you're adding some residential or
I think
value.
it's beyond argument.
That means that you're
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, it's not,
That's
it's
provided
true.
you have the
Yeah.
income to absorb that 500.
yeah, absolutely. So that's moving you to the right as well as just up,
Yeah.
which moves you more along the line.
Right.
So this is the real question, is where are you comfortable being? You know, we're not these communities, we don't have assessed values at $250,000. We're also not the Wellesleys and the Westons, who
Right.
some of them are not even on this chart. There's 4 communities north and west that's assessed values are over $1 million. They just didn't fit in the chart. They're,
That
one of their,
doesn't make any sense.
their
to
taxes
even
are all
look
way
at
up
how much
here,
it
their
costs.
assessed values are way up there. What's the sense?
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things that's gotta be considered, though, is that they do, you're right, you know, a library assessment moves you up a fraction. We do an early child development, it moves you up a fraction and a half,
Right.
or
Two.
2 fractions.
2 or 3.
But, you know, the thing that I think one of the things that I worry about for our neighbors is we've got a fair amount of people in this town who have a fixed income. And you know what? Their real estate value could be anything, and they don't care, because that's
Right.
where they live.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not their savings account.
Right.
It's not, you know, it's not their retirement plan.
Right.
It's where they live, and they like to live in Reading, and I think we have to be careful to be sure that they can stay in Reading. And, you know, the value of their home, frankly, is somewhat immaterial to them. I mean,
Equity is a myth until closing.
Most are
okay,
paid
well
off.
said.
Most are paid off
The value
anyway.
of your stock
so
doesn't
there's no
actually mean
mortgage.
anything until you sell it.
That's right.
That's the other thing too, right?
So I have genuine concerns as we start to talk about operating overrides and a variety of the really kind of nice things that, you know, I mean, look, a fabulous state-of-the-art library is great. A fabulous state-of-the-art early child development center is awesome. I mean, I like all this stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And I know it enhances ultimately the value of the home that I own. But I have neighbors that,
But if you can't afford more taxes, you can't afford more taxes.
correct, and we have
regardless.
a fair amount of
20,000
neighbors
a year.
who
income.
we need to just
Paid up
look out for
homes.
them, you know?
Yep.
And I've asked through the staff, I've asked the Board of Assessors to look at ways that we can change some of the exemptions and exclusions we have, if we
Really
can.
helpful.
If there's a way
And
to.
just a simple thing, I think it went through the board, I don't even remember, was, you know, if you're over a certain age now, you don't have to pay to license your dog, it's free.
Oh my God,
Just
$10
simple
a year.
things, you know, $10 not a big deal.
Well, we
but-
should always do whatever we can in that.
Exactly,
If the-
that was
those-
my point,
those
is that
smaller things,
for
right,
age
that-
and or income, if there's things we can do, we've expanded the tax worker program, so you deserve a discussion with the Board of Assessors on what tools are available, for sure. And a crazy tool that's available, and don't laugh, is voluntary taxes. There are some pretty wealthy communities that have found some success with that because of the
Really?
things you're talking about. So what if you only get another 500,000 of voluntary taxes? That's 500,000 you didn't have, or whatever the
It's real
number
money.
is.
That would solve a shortfall that we had this year.
That would solve,
So we-
but that's not money you can
But it's
necessarily
not
rely
sustainable.
on.
We
So
gotta-
it
we gotta
is-
put a
it- it
checkbox
can-
on the
you can
tax bill.
help- You can help on a year-to-year basis, but.
Yeah.
So
gonna
the
float.
questions that I have here, I don't know, you don't have your email there, do you? You could bring it up, so it's essentially, I have 3 questions outlined, and one was, and the other 2 I hadn't got to were really these service questions and kind of voting on what services you want or don't. But level of services that, you know, the current level of services is what you're happy with? And you're, you know, you like those level of services, but also I'm willing to pay more to keep them the same level, right? I like the current level of services, but I'm not willing to pay more to keep them. Well, that means actually you can't really keep them, and we need to make that point to
Keep
people
some
and
and others.
educate
Because they're
people.
going to cost more.
Because 2.5% is our limit. All of our money, essentially all of our money comes from property taxes. And personally, everybody out there knows, add up your health insurance increases, add up your food increases, add up your heating increases. It's not 2.5. It's more than that.
Yes.
So we have the same constraints as a town. Our expenses go up by more than that. So,
Here you go.
okay, you know, and then the next one is, you know, I want to increase services. I'm willing to pay for those expanded services. I want to reduce the level of services. You know, I'll reduce my taxes. That's my primary thing. And
It's a
and
great series of
you
questions.
get the sense there from across the audience, you know, what they really want.
Are we gonna be able, with the utilization of this equipment, capture all this data?
Yeah, you can print it out afterwards.
I would only be
So-
cautious that you don't want to spend a half hour
No,
on this part
they'll
of
get
the
bored.
No, you don't,
presentation.
you don't. But this gives us a way to like capture information
Yeah.
Okay.
from people voting.
So
That's-
this coming,
This would be in a short segment.
You could gather a lot of
Get a
good
lot of
data.
information, and if you did it, you create a baseline, and you do a town meeting over town meeting.
yeah, it'd be cool.
It's gonna,
Yeah.
it will tell a big story about how the citizens feel.
It'll tell you what 150
Yep.
well-involved people think.
Have we found
Yes,
out if we can
yes.
get any more of them? And we can't, huh?
What do we
They
need,
don't-
like
they don't
20,000?
interact
We're gonna have to take
like-
them to everybody's
No,
house?
no, I wanted to get, we'll have 150, right? So anybody that the
Give
first
or take,
150
yeah.
that get there
Yeah.
get to vote, and the ones that don't. But then it's the school-town balance. So
Oh.
we have the right balance currently. I think we should spend more on schools. We should spend more on town. I think we should spend less on schools. I think we should spend less on towns. Like, those are the choices, right? What do people think? Pick one, you know, what do you think? You know, residential, commercial balance, same thing.
These are provocative questions.
So these are things that, are, you know, they're the things that we need to know
Yep.
as we're going into our planning meeting. So this is sort of ideal timing for us to get
It
some of
is.
this stuff.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
God willing, the technology will work.
It's worked great twice, so,
Yeah.
It's an impressive tool in a meeting.
yeah, it definitely, you know, oh, I get a say right now, like, and I don't have to get up and walk to the microphone.
Right.
You don't have to wait for
And
results.
other people are happy that everybody doesn't have to get up and walk to the
And
microphone.
it's anonymous.
And it's anonymous, which is good. Yeah, actually, there are people who've said they think that that's a, you know, that's a good thing. So I think if we use these questions and these, and I love your charts, but I think they need to be simpler for a town meeting.
The second one's the only one you need. I just wanted to show you the other one.
Yep.
Yeah,
Very cool.
but,
The second one tells a big story.
Yeah.
it does tell a big story, yeah. So.
And it's actually more readable.
It is.
The first one,
You just need to
made
go
me
into
blind.
PowerPoint and make that bullet red, which you can do pretty easily, so.
Which one can do easily? I don't know about me.
Oh, anybody can, once you know the trick. So.
we need to find a 20-something person.
Exactly.
No, I know how to do that.
Well, I know you do, but, aren't you 20-something?
Yeah, in spirit. All right.
Minutes.
So that was, I just wanted to make sure we had a chance to discuss the
Very
questions
good.
that were
Yeah.
here already anyway, and then, you know,
Cool.
John will work on finalizing those. So.
I'll add in your questions and send them to him.
Okay.
See what he says.
Something that and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to bring this up, I probably should have mentioned it at the front of the meeting. But I've been working closely with Gene Delios. And I know that as a result of some work with the Economic Development Committee, there's gonna be a workshop that's coming up on May 5th. It's the Cinco de Mayo thing. And it's the morning, and I know that it may be tough for people's schedules, but the idea is that staff has gotten 200 or 250 questions, Bob, is it something like that? About a self-analysis of the business environment of this town. And I think that staff is doing that. And then the idea is that'll be facilitated by Barry Bluestone, the professor from Northeastern. And the idea is gonna be, the room is filled with business people. Now, I've been working with the Chamber, I know Gina's been working with the Rotary, and the goal is to get as many business people in that room as possible to actually give feedback to the analysis of these questions. Yeah, I mean, I just think that this thing could be very telling. Obviously, if you could make it in person, it would be great.
What's the time? Do you know the time?
Yes, it's 9 till 11:30 in the morning.
And where?
Okay, great.
It's gonna be at Sanborn Place.
Okay.
And it's gonna be on Monday, May 5th. And as I said, I know it's a very challenging time of day and of week.
You bringing the tequila?
Oh yeah, Cinco de Mayo, we're gonna have that. I am going to be there. If anybody else can come, I welcome you. I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of work going on the ground to get as many people from the Chamber and from the Rotary and other sources of business people.
That email go around, is that why I'm ringing a bell?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I'm on the board of the Chamber, and I've sent something out to all the board members, and that's gonna be followed on by an invitation from Bob to the entire membership of the Chamber, so that's, you know.
I actually had a woman talk to me at the dinner tonight about her, I guess, one of her children's putting in the pub into the M.F. Charles building. She goes,
Yes.
why does it take so long? Are we making an effort to invite all those stakeholders?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I think this could be a very, very important meeting for us to,
Absolutely.
you know, and I'm thinking, Bob, that we should even talk to maybe RCTV about videotaping.
Oh, I think that would be a good idea, absolutely.
To capture the spirit of the live involvement of everybody. I think that's why I've invited you to make it if you
Yes.
can. If you can't,
I think I can make it.
My day was wide open to begin with, so.
Well, you were ready for Cinco de Mayo.
It's my birthday.
That's right.
That's right, it's your birthday, that's right.
All right. So we're gonna have interactive
So Margarita's
stuff
around
like
here.
that.
No, but it's gonna be facilitated, and
Yeah.
we're gonna see the questions that have been asked of staff and their answers, and we're gonna be soliciting feedback from stakeholders as to, is that true?
Yeah. I think
So you have to have a thick skin,
I know
I
you
think,
can't
if
not
you're.
on this.
Yeah,
This is a work
and a lot of the answers are factual, their demographic, their income level, whatever. But one or two of them certainly bleed into the opinion.
Right.
And just from the way we've answered them, you know, we start putting our tail between our legs and saying, uh-oh. I see where this is going.
Gina has said to me that there's a telling trail that these.
Yeah,
that
well,
these
we're not
take.
being as helpful as we could, but we're 10% business, so.
Yep.
We do have that is, you know.
You know, his tool is used throughout the US in cities that are 50-50 and
Yeah, like
75-25, so you do have to keep that in mind.
Right. But he does a lot of towns in Massachusetts. So, you know, so I do
That's
think,
great.
when I saw it the very first time, when I saw the idea of it, you know, which I think was probably back, maybe even in December, I was at
Yeah,
a
within
ABC
the last 6 months.
and it struck me that,
Thank you, yeah, I did get yours.
Well, that's the new one.
Okay.
oh, is this the committee liaisons thing?
Yeah.
I gotta finish that.
Okay, so, I do too.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to-
So we
You wanna
have,
do minutes?
the last thing on it is minutes, is
Okay.
approval of minutes.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve the minutes of March 11th, 2014 as amended.
Second? All right, I think I did have an amendment.
Send this to Bob.
Sure.
I could find it.
Back to Bob.
Thank you.
They were
in the
separate
weekend
PDFs.
packet?
Separate-
Yeah, I know they were in separate PDFs, and I
Sure.
actually printed them all out and looked at them.
Here.
And I had some notes, but I don't remember where they are.
It looks pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Oh, this is this first one, Bob, the
Yeah,
3/11,
is that March 11th?
So, Paul, on page 3, the hearing about the tree removal.
Yes.
So, I took a walk down, and it doesn't look like the trees that caused the damage. There is damage to the wall that's not near those trees. The major damage is not near the trees, is what that
Oh,
second
you're right. Yeah,
sentence
I remember that.
should say. Major damage was just like, and actually it looks much worse right now. I don't know what happened to it, it looks, but and it's nowhere near a tree,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
No.
All those in favor?
Move the Board of Selectmen approve the minutes of April 9th, 2014 as amended.
Second. Second.
Yep. All those in favor?
Now,
Zero?
to take that spurious section out of the executive session minutes, can we do that here, or?
That, I mean,
That's understood.
that's not material to the.
That was
to
in
the-
one
to the
version,
meeting.
but
All
not
right.
another, don't worry about
So I
it.
can make the motion as written.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
move the Board of Selectmen approve the executive session minutes of April 15th, 2014 as written.
Second. Kevin seconds, all those in favor? All right,
Done.
I believe we're complete.
Move the Board of
Our
Selectmen
agenda.
adjourn the meeting at 10:31 PM.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye, aye, sir.